Так, последние 5 минут стрима вы пропустили. Ну, короче, я смотрел видос, как американец попал в Россию, и походу его оттуда турнули, блядь. То есть он там посидел, поехал в другой город на поезде, и походу его, блядь, нахуй оттуда выперли просто. Бля, забавно. Дикари ебаные. Канобе, привет. Я хочу в 1 посмотреть тот отрезок, где его выпиздили со стороны. Просто чтобы услышать, что ему сказали. И услышать, что он сказал, потому что там очень плохо слышно было. Короче, сейчас звук отключу, чтобы не запривативать. Блять, нет. Это было бы слишком просто. Его не просто турнули оттуда. Его, короче, в шпионаже обвинили, он там, блядь, в каталажке 18 дней просидел. Ебать, ебать. Я думал, Россия конченая, но она слишком конченая даже для того, чтобы я мог себе просто представить, да, то есть я себе представил просто хуевую ситуацию, да, то есть он там слабо выговорился, и он, короче, себя на камеру снимал, да, и говорит, типа, ну, меня отсюда это, как бы, типа, говорят, пошел нахуй. Я подумал, ему просто сказали, типа, покупай билет на самолет до своего Нью-Йорка, блядь, и уебывай, блядь, отсюда. Они его там, блядь, 18 дней, блядь, в тюрьме продержали, блядь. И перед этим, блядь, еще нахуй допрашивали дохуя времени. Ебать хуйня. Вот это, блядь, добрая страна, блядь. А, это, блядь, из первоначальной поездки? Так, блядь, интересно. Хочу посмотреть.
Forget that. I don't want to make videos like that. Let me just hold the camera. Hey, this is a video about how I was arrested in Russia and then sent to prison on a fake crime. This is not a video that I wanted to make. It's not the kind of video I ever want to make. I try to avoid politics on this channel and focus on the people of different countries. But this time, the politics came to me. This ended up being the most frightening experience of my entire life. This happened in a region of Russia called the Jewish Oblast, a region that ironically has almost no Jewish people. But given the history, I wanted to go there and explore. I'll tell this story in two parts, in two different videos. This video will be the vlog that I was trying to make. It's all the events that led up to my arrest. And the next video will cover the nightmare that happened after. So with that said, let's begin. I'm in a very strange place that I just arrived in. This is what the Soviet Union created to be the first Israel, the real Israel, where all the Jewish people would move to. Didn't quite work out that way, but the town is still here. It's called Bijan. Today, we're gonna take a walk around the city and the region, and I guess see how Jewish it still is. Let's go. Well, besides the giant menorah that greets you as soon as you walk out of the train station, it otherwise looks like a very typical Russian city. Apparently, at one point, over half of the people living here were Jewish, and the main language was Yiddish. Those days are long gone. This seems to be the central park of Bijan. So I was reading about the remaining Jewish population here. Unsurprisingly, the vast majority left a long time ago, even before Israel opened its borders to citizens from the former Soviet Union. And apparently there's literally only just, at most, like 100 Jews left there. A couple hundred. Now, I am not Jewish myself, although something like half my audience thinks I am. It's because of the New York accent. But I am interested in interesting, unique, weird cultural phenomena like this. This is not a monument to the Jews of the Jewish Oblast. This is a monument to World War II. There are many monuments like this all across Russia. And as we've seen in the past, across the different nations, former nations of the Soviet Union, here's another eternal flame. There's my shadow being reflected on a monument. Oh, it's hard to film at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And all along here, you have little monuments dedicated to the heroes that died fighting Nazi Germany in World War II. You have names of them. But you'll notice something interesting. None of the names are Jewish. Now, granted, my Russian is far from perfect, but looking at this is a super typical Russian name, Petrovich, or Ivanovich. You don't have any Goldsteins or typical Jewish names here. At the turn of the 20th century, Russia had the largest population of Jews in Europe, and I believe the world. But there was a problem. You had pogroms in Russia. This caused many Russian Jews, if they could, to move to Israel. But after the Communist Revolution, after the Bolshevik uprising, after the Soviet Union was formed, it became impossible for Jews to leave Russia. And so, in order to adapt to society, suffer less discrimination, many of them changed their names. They became indistinguishable, so they thought, from the rest of the population. Here are the movies that you can watch at the Kinуть theater, the movie theater. I don't think any of these are foreign. I don't think there's any Hollywood stuff here. All Russian. This is my hotel room here in Dijon. Not that cheap. I don't know. Maybe my sense of cheap is all skewed after being in China. This is like $40, $45. I think there's just like a lack of supply of hotels in this town. Nobody's actually visiting. But yeah, it's got this little bed. Funny story.
Очень похоже на ту гостиницу, в которой я останавливался. В Ржеве. Только тут как будто бы обои посвежее.
My train arrived at 4 o'clock.
Локс прикольный. Лох прикольный. Привет.
In the morning. They actually, I guess the room I actually booked was a different one. And they have this thing in Russia where you just share a room with a stranger. So they gave me the key to the room. I walk into the room, and then there's just a guy in there. And I'm like, what is going on here? Went back to the check-in counter, and they looked at me like an idiot. Like, yeah, obviously we do that here in Russia. You just share a room with a stranger who possibly murder you in the night. But thankfully they had one last single room available. So here we are, having fun in the Jewish Old West. And so that's it. That is the Centralnaya Hotel of Dijon. That's sign right there. Basically, it's coming, that's the hotel you're staying at. I think there's one more, but according to the reviews I read, it's full of cockroaches and rats, so I think I got the market covered.
Главное, что нашли как будто.
Да, я рад. Кстати, вы еврей?
Я?
Да. Я слышал много евреев здесь.
Да нет, куда. Евреем можете не быть, но раз живешь здесь еврейской автономии, то по-еврейски жить обязан.
Хорошо.
Я когда в армии служил, солдатом был, меня там звали евреем. 50 лет назад.
50 лет назад. Okay.
Была перепись населения, людей считали. Было 4% евреев.
4%?
В еврейской автономной области в 80-м году было 4%. А сейчас это еще меньше. Сейчас мы в 90-м нам разрешили уезжать, сейчас мы уехали.
Окей. Менял немного.
Название только осталось, просто название. Жить тяжело здесь. Голодно.
Да, холодно.
Как понять?
I just noticed you had a cross. Just noticed that's where Jewish. Across the street there, you have an Orthodox church, which is now by far the dominant religion in the area. Извините. Где синагога?
С той стороны. С той стороны, вот налево.
Окей.
Вот видите дорогу?
Окей.
Через 1, 2, 3 дом синагога.
Окей, спасибо.
3, 4.
Окей.
Ну там в ограде.
Вы евреи?
Я нет.
Нет, окей. Я тоже. Спасибо. Let's go see the big synagogue of Dijon. The big synagogue of the Jewish Old West. We may actually find a Jewish person. Alright, this has got to be the synagogue. I mean, what else could it be? When did Jews go to the synagogue? On Saturday, right? That's when they can't use any electricity. Maybe we should come back then. I mean, by pure luck, it's a Thursday, so could swing back here in 2 days. Might go and hit up another city in the area, but as long as I'm not hungover, I think we can come back and interact with the Jews on the Jewish Old West. So this is the Jewish Museum, Dijon. It starts way back, way back. Not really sure what's that big Jewish. This is an exhibit of a bear eating one of the early Jewish settlers in the region. Это Mongolia? Тунгусы? Окей. И евреи?
Не.
Где евреи? Это евреи музей?
Ну да, на втором этаже так
окей.
Тунгусы манжурские.
Манжурские.
Манжуры, не Китай.
Okay. Okay, so this looks like it's describing the early settlement. So this is a picture of the Soviet Union 6 years after it was formed. Big wigs minus Stalin getting together.
Еду.
Inside.
Спасибо. Хотелось бы, конечно, какую-то нормальную еду. Но пюре тоже пойдет.
Make a region for the Jews. It was a big thing at the time. The Soviets really played up how they were for the people, or liberating people. Oh, it's Stalin. Okay, here's Stalin. Makes you think I'm really interested in Stalin. And of course, you cannot have a museum in Russia without some tanks, some military equipment, something about World War II. It's always got to be something. This right here apparently describes. It's always got to be something. This right...
Бля. Нога чешется, сука.
This right here apparently describes the growth in Jewish women labor productivity from 1939 to 1940. You see how it was skyrocketing? It's going to the moon. Could we just kept going up right after that? Nothing ever happened after. И много ли американцев приезжают сюда?
Ну, бывает, да, делегация бывает.
Иногда?
Иногда бывает,
Окей, да. Я из Нью-Йорка.
Что вы говорите? Мужчина из Африки.
И вы из евреев?
Я? Да, родилась здесь.
Окей. Вы была в Израиле? Раньше?
Раньше, да.
Окей. Один раз, два раза?
Да.
There you go. И это что?
Это, кстати, да, в сельском хозяйстве. Так написано.
Окей. Вы говорите по-английски? Чуть-чуть? Окей, я русский чуть-чуть. This is describing how when the Jewish settlers came here, they were put on a collective to produce honey. That was their job. They were making honey. Кто он?
Он главный врач ветеринарии. Главный врач.
Главный врач. Окей.
Ветеринарии.
Окей. Область евреев. Окей.
Да.
Окей. Понял.
Хорошо.
Закрыто?
Да, уже закрыт человек.
Окей. И что это?
СБОр.
СВО?
Да, да.
Окей. Что?
СБОр.
СВО?
Да, да.
Окей. Это новый?
Это новый, да.
Это новый. You can see from this map just how close.
Блять, музей своего. Ты новости смотришь? Нет, не новости. Смотрел путешественника, который, блядь, охуел, блядь, от того, как его, блядь, гостеприимно приняла Россия. Предоставил ему, так сказать, бесплатное жилье, блядь, нахуй, на 3 недели. В комнате очень ограниченной по размеру, вместе с соседствующими жильцами. Больше похожую на хостел. Если вы понимаете, о чем я.
We are to China. This is Kitai, China. We are right around here. I know, right here. So, it's in literally a couple hours. We'd be in China. What a crazy place to send the Jews.
Дорога ЖД до Москвы.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Сибирская магистраль. Да.
Wow. Я...
Владивосток, Владивосток, знаете?
Да, да.
Вот с Владивостока и до Москвы. Железная дорога.
Я из Петербурга и Владивостока путешествую. Да.
Далеко.
Alright, so she said there's tasty and clean food. Maybe she meant kosher. I'm not sure. Pretty sure they think I'm Jewish. But there's a restaurant down the street. Wow, this is really nice. Pass.
У вас холодно? В хате сейчас 20 градусов. И мне для этого... Ну, мне это холодно. Я люблю потеплее. 24 я снимаю куртку.
5 o'clock, and the sun is still out. Haven't seen this in a while. Fun fact, even though we are right next to the border with China, this place is actually 2 hours ahead of China. So right now it's 5 something in Russia, and it's 3 something over there in China, which doesn't make any sense. But that's just how China does things. One time zone for the entire country. There are some small, subtle signs that are on the border with China. For example, at the gold shop right here, they have written in Chinese, Guangjin. That is one thing that Russia has that China wants. Minerals, gold, oil, gas. Sadly, I feel like this is a sign that somebody Chinese was here. Left some Chinese fast food products on the floor. And it's up to the American. Clean up. Not really sure what this store is. It says it has It's got Chinese products, but then there's an 18 plus sign up there. Are those like different stores, or is this an erotic Chinese supermarket? Все продукты китайские?
Китайские разные там, корейские там, ну, вьетнамские там.
Вьетнам.
Русские там,
Вьетнам.
корейские там.
Окей.
Здесь китайские нету там, кофе.
Окей. Это Япон?
Японские там.
Японский, да. Окей. Вы из здесь?
Я уже русский паспорт там. Всё.
Я из Америки.
А, ты Америки?
Да, да, да. Нет, я первый раз, это первый день.
Первый раз или
Да, да, да. Нет.
Ты русский говоришь, хорошо, да?
А, нет, хорошо.
Нет,
Плохо, плохо,
да,
плохо.
Я учил.
Вы говорите по-русски
Нет,
и по-корейски?
Да.
О, понятно.
Прям так, русский говори, китайский говори, корейский говори, итальянский.
О, вау. Китайский тоже?
Китайский тоже, учил это тоже.
Окей. Вы едем?
Да, да.
Это
Корейский.
корейский. Это корейский. Окей.
Это китайский.
Буду купить степно. Нет. Купить? Да, да. Alright. It's getting a little homesick. Since I'm basically Asian. I'll pick up some instant noodles. Have something to eat in the hotel there. Side note, I feel like, based off the way that lady reacted to me asking if she was from here, she probably gets stupid questions like that a lot. But she lightened up really quickly once I was American. And here we have...
На футболке чтобы быть? Ну, 24 градуса это в футболке. 27 это я уже сижу прям в майке.
Albert. No, that's not Albert Einstein. Shalom.
Альберт Эйнштейн.
Oh, that's also the name of the main bulldog here. Like that's who it's named after. This guy, I believe he helped kickstart the Jewish Oblast. The Russians love to leave comments whenever I make a small slip up in what I'm saying. Like when I called the Troitsky most, Bratsky most. It wasn't the Trotsky bridge, it was the Unity bridge. Still learning language. Not malicious. I make mistakes. Alright, well, apparently we've got to get to that Jewish restaurant because nothing in this town is open past 9 o'clock. We're gonna get there soon. We're gonna start. Here we go. This is the place. If you couldn't tell by the Orthodox man jumping up with the menorah, it's clearly the Jewish restaurant. Alright, here we have Jewish food. Got some quiches, and this was... I forgot what this was called. It's meat. Meat and sauce. And it's kosher. We're being holy.
Meat sauce.
More religious, because being kosher and being halal is basically the same thing. That's good. Potato panish. Russian Jewish food. Out in Siberia, on the border with China. If you were creating a story for like a video game, I don't think you could even come up with this. Alright, night has actually fallen here on Azerbaijan, and it's starting to get cold, so need to get indoors. Tomorrow morning, what I'm thinking is we can go out to one of the original settlements of the autonomous Jewish Oblast, where they set up the first collective farms. And if we do that, we'll actually get right up on the border with China. And you know, I'd love to get as close as I can to China. What we do. So, see you tomorrow morning. Alright. Found a guy who's willing to drive me around. Just make sure the car can't break down first. And I'm not sure what side we're going to. Hashina, Japon. What's Japanese called? It's on the left side. Всех российских преподавателей это? Да. Ну, он спасает в многих случаях. То есть при аварии, что доказать, что ты правда вообще страшно. There's a restaurant here called Cuba. The scenery that we're driving through here really kind of reminds me of like the savannah in Africa. You see like these trees popping up here and there, but there's no forest. So we're deep in the middle of nowhere. I came here because this was
Глубоко, хуй пойми где.
first collective,
Deep never.
first group of farms that was set up for the Jewish Oblast. It was right here. But of course, this is not a monument to that collective. This is a monument to war. And a monument has to be about war. It says, no, you don't have to read this one. It says, remember, through the years, remember, will come again. 1941 to 1945. So, these are the people from this town, from this village, that went off to fight the Nazis. This is a memorial to them. It's probably not a memorial to the ones that were purged by Stalin afterward, but it's a memorial to them.
А тут не закрасил, кстати. Тут он еще не понял, что это хуйня полная. Второй ролик отличается. Какая у тебя специальность? Художник. Я художник-аниматор на этом канале. Это единственный источник дохода в моей жизни. Больше я ничем не зарабатываю. Но на самом деле мои художества не приносят мне денег. Практически.
Мне интересна история евреев здесь. Здесь есть музей или синагога?
Здесь в деревне?
Да.
Откуда здесь? Деревня.
Alright. Apparently there are not many Jews still left in the original collective of the Jewish Oblast. Man, this place is the absolute middle of nowhere. It's wild. This is very, very far from Moscow. Both literally and metaphorically. Okay, so I'm now noticing that they set up this kind of playground all over Russia using like recycled materials. Yeah, I'm bored as shit already. Is there any sign of the Jewish past left in this town?
Есть?
Да, 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 да.
Нет,
Нет?
Только биробиджане.
Только в Биробиджане.
Биробиджане есть синагога. Вы были там?
Да, я сегодня был в Биробиджане.
Биробиджане нет.
It's basically all the Jews left. Which is shocking. How could you not want to stay here with this valuable real estate? Okay, it's not a show. It's fine. It's weird how I have like no fear walking around here. That concept, you know, somebody running up on your house, robbing you, basically doesn't exist here. People don't have to worry about that. You know, it's very rare that we're gonna shoot an absolute stranger in Russia. I mean, you might get shot if you're a political dissident or you're in a neighboring country, but you really don't have to worry about getting shot on the streets of Russia. It's much safer. There's like way more dogs than people in this town. Even each. So, I read that. That's post office over there. So I read that when this place was first set up, when they first created this collective back in the late 1920s, the early 1930s, they had a school, a Yiddish school, they had a bathhouse, they had a cheese factory. There's a lot of stuff here, and it's really hard to tell. Извините, меня вопрос. Я читал, раньше здесь был фабрика сыр, только есть? Okay.
Фабрики не было тут.
Oh, okay, спасибо. Doesn't sound like a cheese factory here anymore. It is really kind of insane to imagine Jewish people from Moscow and St. Petersburg moving all the way out here where there was nothing, and the weather sucks, the land isn't really fertile. But the driving reason was the Jewish Oblast, as was imagined. That was the first proposed Jewish state in the world, even before Israel. We did have Jews moving to the Middle East already. There were many in Palestine at that point. But this was the first actual proposed Jewish state.
Ладно, отец, я пойду спать. Мы тебя любим и надеемся, что все будет хорошо. Удачи тебе. Давай, пока.
And did have some traction for a bit. Problem was, by 1936, Stalin had begun his purges, and the Jews were getting targeted along with everybody else. And unfortunately, this became an easy place to target, since all the Jews were gathered in one area. So the cheese factory and the bathhouse and the Yiddish school were quickly shut down. This whole project didn't last very long. But Jews did start to come back here, somewhat unwillingly. And the Soviet Union was in full swing. It was giving out tickets to Jewish people, because everybody was marked by their ethnicity. They didn't really have a choice on where to go. They just gave them one-way tickets to Biробidjan and the Jewish Oblast. Can you imagine taking more than a 7-day train journey just to arrive at this? Imagine. And as if that wasn't enough, then you're also still getting targeted by the state. I just want to make a note to the Russians watching this. Just because I bring up the not-so-nice history of Stalin, or I make fun of Stalin, does not mean that I hate Russia. I actually like Russia a lot. I've enjoyed my travels throughout the country. You know, we gotta keep it real. But honestly, I don't even know if these people that get upset when they make fun of Stalin are real people. Could be Russian bots, people paid by the state to write comments defending Russia. You know how you're arguing with a Russian bot online? Their only argument will be, well, look at America. But that doesn't work on me, because I'll make fun of America too. Russia and America both have problems.
Туда-сюда, короче. Я у него зафотал документы, что паспорта у меня с собой нет, но он мне показывает паспорт на продажу, это китайский, да. Вот, типа блогер, давайте документы скину, посмотри, что это вообще за документы, я такие расскажу.
Well, shit. Just got stopped by the cops there. The guy who did not look like a cop. I'm guessing.
Какой-то человек на велике услышал его, блядь, и решил сдать его ментам. Ха! Ебать.
Паспорта у меня с собой нет, туда-сюда, короче. Я у него туда-сюда, короче. Я у него зафотал документы, что паспорта у меня с собой нет, но он мне показывает паспорт на продажу, это китайский, да. Вот, типа блогер, давайте документы скинул, посмотри, что это вообще за документы, я такие
Well, shit. Just got stopped by the cops there. The guy who did not look like a cop. I'm guessing maybe that guy I asked before was trying to ask some questions about the village, must have reported me. And my patience for not mentioning this stuff is starting to get pretty thin. I'm just here to make videos. I've been very positive towards Russia in a time when no one is positive towards Russia. But maybe I'm insane. Maybe I'm actually
Просто какое-то чмо ехало на велике, блядь, нахуй, тормознуло, блядь, иностранца. И сдало ментам. Ебать. Вот это свинья.
insane. Why am I still making these videos? It is a bit funny though that literally right after I was talking about Russian bots, the actual police shows up. I mean, literally 10 seconds later. Oh, Russia. Alright, so after having a run in with the police, I probably should just go back there to John and turn the camera off, but I don't know what's the deal with making these videos because I have few screws loose. I probably should just go back there to John and turn the camera off, but I don't know what's the deal with making these videos because I have few screws loose. I'm gonna continue on, just go back there to John and
Так, что он там говорит? Я сейчас Вадим их прослушаю, потому что не очень понятно, а сам он себя поправляет, что он идиот. Короче, он сам себе говорит, что нахуй ты туда едешь. Короче, лучше бы ты закончил видео здесь. Посреди жопы. Ну, насыпано дохуя, блядь, этого, блядь. Гравия. Тупо не дорога, а хуйня.
which is the border town with China. And I just asked him, apparently there's a bridge that you actually take to get to China. They can passport check and everything. That's not what we're doing. I don't have a passport or anything, but you see there's a lot more activity going on here. They're apparently building a new highway. Lots of and pulled up. The weather here is a lot more mild. I can even take off my jacket for a bit. I always get freaked out to see these guys in army jackets. They're not actually soldiers. It's just a popular jacket to wear in Russia. But after what just happened in the last town, you can see here on the building, part is written in Chinese. Kind of funny Chinese, actually. Like normally in Chinese you wouldn't separate characters like that. Probably like a Russian college student doing a translation. I'm basically saying there's places for rent there. Or you can buy it, whatever you want. And there's a Chinese-built crane over there. That would be a Chinese company doing construction. And of course, being that this place is called Leninskaya, there is naturally a Lenin monument. Always has to be a Lenin monument. Here it tells you that he was born in 1870 and died in 1924. That's what Stalin took power. And he's facing the direction of China. The river, the Amur River, Heilongjiang is over there. It's almost as if he's calling out, join us China, join us in our revolution. Keep in mind, this is also still part of the Jewish Oblast. But once we get out places like this, there's almost no trace of it whatsoever. This is another monument to World War II. Here are more babushkas. Here is a sign for the police. During and after the purges of Stalin, when many Russian Jews were changing their names, hiding their identities, there were also many, I guess you could call Christian Russian residents moving into these areas. And then after the fall of the Soviet Union, Christian Russians continued to move in here. And it became okay again to be any religion. You could be Christian. You could become very Christian if you want. So many of these churches that you see, places like this, they're only built in the last 30 years. I'm getting very paranoid every car that passes me is somebody here have a chat with me. Like I just got like this dark cloud hanging over my head now. Like something shitty is about to happen. So apparently there's some kind of restaurant down this way. Is it a restaurant?
Базар.
Banqueti, banquets, business lunch. Business lunch. I just want to have lunch. You have to leave. Да, откуда? Америка. В Америке? Да. Да. Как ты сюда попал? В Америке там откуда? Какой город? Нью-Йорк. Нью-Йорк? Да. Я надеюсь, Америка и Россия друзья. Ну, друзья, не получается пока ничего, да? Да. Что-то. Может быть, объект.
Okay, this is the restaurant. No, закрыто.
Закрыто. Они сегодня у нас пятница, да?
Да.
С 9 до 3 работают.
Жалко.
Ну, там пойди в центр, там где? Да.
Да. В центр ресторанов нет. Нету. Да. Супермаркет. Я пойду в
Ну,
супермаркет.
там в магазин купи что-нибудь.
Да.
Давай, хорошо.
Спасибо.
Как тебя звать?
Том. Том. Да.
Майк.
Миша.
Давай.
There you go. Mike, or Misha, was trying to help me find something to eat, but this is a small Russian border town. There's no McDonald's.
There's no McDonald's. В деревне. Бля, честно говоря, по моим ощущениям, в России, если город не миллионник, то там Макдональдса нет. Может, меня кто-то поправит, и сейчас уже не так, но я, по-моему, когда ездил по России, если город меньше, чем миллионник, там Макдональдса просто нет.
There's no McDonald's in Moscow, but you get one. That's more niches. Keeping it the Jewish thing of the video. We have another niche. I got a little market there. Hopefully the food safety standards are on point here. Because there's some barely cooked meat inside.
Что это, ты знаешь? Это палки ставят, сухую траву выжигают.
Big fun. It's right on the border with China. I can really feel the ash going down my throat. I was gonna say. That's an old thing for them to go burn something. I should look at everybody.
That is where my footage ended. Everything after this from that day was deleted. Eventually, we reached the lookout point for China, which is all I wanted to see. You could also see a bridge connecting Russia to China's Heilongjiang province. There's nothing secret about this bridge. Russia proudly shows it off on national news. And then almost immediately, I was around the province. There's nothing secret about this bridge. Russia proudly shows it off on national news. And then almost immediately, I was approached by 3 Russian border police officers. I knew almost immediately that this was dead, and I was probably going to be detained. Honestly, after running with the police in the first town, this could have happened anywhere. A suspicious American was now in the Russian system after all. But this is where it ended up happening. Russia has many laws that a foreigner would never be aware of. For example, in many parts of the country, foreigners cannot be within 20 kilometers of the border. One of the officers spoke strangely good English, explained that it was illegal for me to be there without a permit. He also said, don't worry, this is not a serious crime. It carries a maximum penalty of 500 rubles, which is about $5. This is important, so remember it for later. They seemed to understand that I was just a vlogger, but one had a body cam, and there was no way that they could just let a suspicious American walk away. So I was driven all the way back to a border police office in Leninskoye, the town I had just been in. At first, I was told that it wasn't a big deal. I would just pay the fine, and that'd be it. Don't worry, they said. But then I was told that because I didn't have my passport, I'd have to stay overnight in the town. Just overnight. And then I'd get my passport the next day, and it'd be over, they said. So I was brought to the local police station in Leninskoye, and led inside to an extremely small jail cell that had nothing but a mat and a dirty blanket and pillow. I was obviously worried at this point. After all, I'd never been to jail before. But I thought, if they had told the truth, then it was no big deal. I'd just spend the night in jail, leave the next day. Maybe they were telling the truth. I'll never know. But then the FSB, the modern day KGB, showed up. And this was where the real nightmare began.
Imprisoned in Russia, accused of being spy. Full story.
Hey, how you doing? I'm going to tell you the story of how I was unjustly locked up in Russia as a tourist. For those that don't know me, I'm an American travel vlogger, although that's not how I normally introduce myself. But to the Russian police, that was the only thing that mattered. This is not a happy travel vlog. I gotta warn you right now. This is a story of how senseless and brutal the Russian government can be, even towards someone whose opinion of Russia before all this was at worst neutral. It's not anymore, sadly. This is the story of how I was locked up in Russia for weeks, and the whole time, I didn't think I'd ever get out. Let me tell you that story.
I was originally arrested near a town on Russia's border with China called Leninskoye on Friday, October 25th. I was filming a vlog about the Jewish Oblast, or at least what was left of it, which wasn't much. I arrived there that day from Bijan, the capital of the region, and also the place where I'd left my luggage. This was only meant to be a day trip, and then I catch a train to Khabarovsk at night. My crime, being within 20 kilometers of the border without a permit. This is the only actual crime that I committed. It's obviously not a very serious one. According to Russian law, the penalty is
Еврейская автономная область, Ленинский район, Ленина, 13, кабинет 7. Начальник отделения Ленинская Фролов Денис Николаевич, рассмотрев обстоятельства совершенного административного правонарушения с участием лица, привлекаемого к ответственности, фамилия Томас, дата рождения, место рождения США, штат Нью-Йорк, Нью-Йорк, место жительства или место пребывания США, штат Нью-Йорк, Гражданство, образование, университет, Бенгментон, экономист, телефон, семейное положение, состав семьи, не женат, детей на иждивение не имеет. Место работы не трудоустроен, ведет блогерскую деятельность на YouTube, канал Sabbatical. Отношение к записи. Отношение к военной обязанности, не военной обязанные. Судимости, не судим, инвалидность, тяжелое заболевание не имеет. Соединенных Штатов Америки. Так. С участием переводчика Аметченко Вероники Леонидовны, зарегистрированной по адресу. Так. А он, кстати, он слил ее паспорт. Мем. Ну ладно, похуй, в принципе. Какая-то пидорасиша, которая умела разговаривать по-английски. Так. Которые разъяснены ее подробности, обязанности, предусмотренные об административных правонарушениях. Я предупреждена об административной ответственности за выполнение заведомо неправильного перевода, предусмотренной Кодексом Российской Федерации административных правонарушений. Права и обязанности, предусмотренные Конституцией РФ. Так. 25 октября 2024 года, 16 часов 30 минут по местному времени, гражданин США Томас выявлен пограничным нарядом в ходе осуществления пограничной деятельности за наблюдением пограничного режима в пограничной зоне Ленинского муниципального района в Нижнеленинском по улице Вилковой, Д10, территория личного пункта пропуска через государственную границу без документов на право прохода въезда в пограничную зону. Без паспорта и пропуска в пограничную зону. Из материалов дела об административном правонарушении следует, что Томас выявлен пограничным нарядом в ходе проверки документов на право пребывания в пограничной зоне Еврейского автономного округа на законные требования сотрудников пограничной службы ФСБ России.
Themselves told me that it was just a fine, and I shouldn't worry. But then the officer received a call from Bijan, once again the capital of the Jewish Oblast. All of a sudden, the plans changed. I would not just be paying a $5 fine. I'd have to stay in the police jail for up to 48 hours, they said.
And so I was fingerprinted and had everything taken from me, except for my shirt and jeans. They even took my shoelaces. I had to walk around in my shoes without them. They put me into a tiny cell with a dirty mat and pillow. And then, a few hours after I entered the cell, I was told to come out again. Someone had come to see me. I was led into a small room with a table where two men and an interpreter were waiting for me. It was the FSB, the modern-day KGB. They had driven down 2 hours from Bijan to come and interrogate me. Apparently, they thought I was a spy. I began to get nervous. There were two officers. One was seated and aggressively conducting the interrogation. The other was just standing silently in the corner, filming. They were the worst kind of people you could encounter. Someone who thinks they're really smart, but actually isn't. They told me to speak English and told me to respond in it, but every time I did, they didn't understand. I had to ask the interpreter to translate. I watched your YouTube videos, the officer said. They're very anti-Russia. You determined this because the title of my first video was originally, They Told Me Not to Visit Russia, clearly not understanding how YouTube clickbait works. Apparently, me speaking different languages, particularly Chinese, was very suspicious. The officer asked me a series of questions about why I was in Russia, trying to get me to admit I was an American spy. Then he began to ask me about my life in China, about what I did there, about what relationship I had with the Chinese government, which interestingly gave me the impression he thought I might actually be a Chinese spy. China and Russia may be allies, but I learned from this that they definitely don't trust each other. They also told me that I looked like a drunkard because of my beard. As the interrogation ended, the officer told me that they were worried about my health and well-being. The next day, they were going to have me go for a health checkup. How nice of them. I immediately knew they were trying to find me with drugs in my system. My phone and camera were also taken. I was left asleep, somehow, in my tiny cell. I woke up, and not long after, a local FSB officer told me it was time for the health checkup. I was put in a car, and we drove for 2 hours through the nothingness of far eastern Russia. We arrived at a rundown-looking hospital where there was no one in sight. The FSB, who had interrogated me the night before, was waiting there. It turns out this wasn't a health checkup at all. It was a drug test, and only a drug test. I was told to go and pee in a cup. I did so, not thinking I had anything to hide. My sample was analyzed, and horrifyingly, my result threw a false positive. It said I had meth in my system. The FSB gleefully told me this through a translation app. Of course, I've never taken meth in my life. I'm not Walter White. And they would later retest my sample to show that I was clean.
Они его еще, короче, в употреблении наркотиков обвинили. Ебать, вот это козлы.
Except they never told me this. They let me sit there agonizing over if I had somehow accidentally ingested something with meth in it. A kind of psychological torture, the first of many. I was then driven 2 hours back to the police station and taken back to my cell. Or maybe due to exhaustion, I managed to sleep the whole night. The next morning, I received what I thought was the best news of my life. You're free, the police said. I was led out of the cell to pick up the stuff I had on me when I was arrested. My wallet, my phone, my belt. I was able to tie my shoes again. I was brought from town police station to the border police office and told I just had to pay 500 rubles, $5, and I was free to go. The border police officer who had originally arrested me was also there. He said he was going to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Everything felt surreal. I paid the fine. It was told by the border police that they arranged a taxi to take me back to Bijan, the capital of the region. Go get your luggage and passport. Don't stop anywhere along the way, is what they told me. The taxi wasn't free. I had to pay the equivalent of $70. I immediately began sending messages to my family and friends, letting them know everything was all right. And then the taxi entered into the Siberian plains that stood between Leninoskoye and Bijan. There was no phone signal. But there was something weird about this taxi, and I could tell. The driver avoided eye contact with me and didn't speak the entire time. there was another woman in the back who also didn't speak. The rearview mirror was angled in a weird position, so I couldn't see what was behind me. After 2 excruciatingly long hours, we arrived back in Bijan. I was going to tell the driver the address of the apartment hotel I had stayed in, but the woman behind me was already telling me. It turns out this woman behind me is actually an FSB officer, and I immediately knew something messed up, something really messed up was about to happen. As soon as we arrived at the apartment, I saw there was an entire squadron of police waiting for me, some were FSB. I was dragged out of the car without resisting and told to show my passport, but I couldn't. It was in the apartment, and they knew this. The 2 FSB officers who had interrogated me were there, and one was filming again. At no point was I told why I was being arrested again. Very quickly, I was led by 4 officers into another SUV, and then was driven to the Bijan police station. I was led up a flight of stairs and down a hall to a secret office, which clearly was for the FSB. And then I was finally told why they were arresting me again. For my YouTube videos. In the description of my video, I've written the word
You should never visit Russia, but I did anyway. Понял.
invasion. I had not written who was invading who, and it had nothing to do with the video. But according to them, this was proof of discrediting the armed forces. I was then told that, terrifyingly, the very next day, I was going to be put on trial for my crimes. And so, I was led back down the stairs, and was put in yet another jail cell in the police station, where I was supposed to stay overnight. This cell was a bit bigger, but it also smelled like a garbage dump, and I nearly froze to death that night. I don't think I got any sleep in that cell that night. I knew all this was bad. I just had to hope the trial would be fair. Any idiot could see that my videos are not about the war in Ukraine. But sadly, this was Russia. The next morning, I'm taken to the courthouse in Bijan. The FSB are there. I haven't been able to change my clothes or shower in 3 days. I'm led into a small room where the trial is supposed to take place. The trial begins, and the female judge announces that I'm there not for the crime of my YouTube videos, but for resisting arrest. And right there and then, I knew I was in a bad place. This is the nightmare everyone hears about Russia. A fake crime, a fake trial. My interpreter was literally there to help convict me. The trial was over in minutes. Guilty. The judge announced. Was given the maximum penalty allowed. 15 days in jail. And then very quickly afterward,
15 дней в тюрьме.
they immediately held the trial that they said I was originally there for discrediting the armed forces with my YouTube videos. Once again, the trial was over in minutes. Guilty. 50,000 ruble fine. $500. It all happened so quickly it was hard to process. Something evil had just been done to me. They had just set me up for a fake crime. This wasn't justice, and I wasn't a criminal, but I was going to prison. They told me I'd be in prison for 15 days, but at this point, I didn't know if I'd ever get out of this. I was led to a police van and taken to a prison, or what they referred to as a detention center. Within 30 minutes of the trial ending, I'm placed in a prison cell all by myself. What would you be thinking if this happened to you? You were just convicted of 2 fake crimes. I had just told my family that everything was okay, and now I was in actual prison. I was doing everything to maintain my sanity at this point. In the prison, there are COs that go on patrols up and down the cell blocks.
Этот долбоёб опять вернулся в Россию после этого. Ебать ты даун. Ебать ты даун.
2 cameras in your cell. There's a light that never goes off. There's always noise outside. You always feel like you're being watched. My immediate concerns after the trial were they still hadn't given me back my luggage or passport. What if they planted something in it? What if they put something in my food? I had all kinds of paranoid thoughts at that point. One of the COs was a woman who spoke a tiny amount of English. She was somewhat friendly, and I wanted to share what had happened to me. I decided to voice my concerns about the police and my luggage. In my poor Russian, I said, "Они плохие люди. Я беспокоюсь о моей багаже." They're bad people, I said. I'm worried about my luggage. This was a bad idea. Later that night, I was suddenly taken out of the cell. I was led forward to the front of the prison. Nothing was said. Then, right outside, I'm forcibly taken by 4 police officers into an unmarked SUV. The FSB officer who had originally interrogated me is there in the front seat. No one is telling me where we're going. Then, he turned around and said to me, "Thomas, my contact at the prison told me you said I'm a bad person. That's not good. We don't want something to happen to you." The car drove on in silence. It's at this point that I thought I was going to die. I thought I was about to be pushed out of a window, and no one would ever know what happened to me. 15 long minutes later, we arrived at the hospital. It's the same one from before. "Thomas, we need to drug test you again," the officer told me. And it's at this point that I didn't really trust anything anymore. And I don't know where I got the courage, but I refused it. I asked for a lawyer. I had no idea if I was even allowed to have a lawyer, but apparently something I said was right, because the FSB then went down the hall and started strategizing on how to get me to do the test. I think they were afraid that I was actually right. I couldn't get a lawyer and just not do the test. But eventually they came back and told me if I refused to do the test, I would just be convicted of the same crime again and go to prison for another 15 days. And so I was stuck. Again, what do you even do in a situation like this? I know that they want to send me to prison for a longer sentence for drug possession and usage. And the last time, I received a false result of having meth in my system. I had no idea if this test would be fair. I was not sure about anything at this point, but it didn't seem like there was any way that they were going to let me not do this test, so I finally agreed. Again, I had to pee in a cup, but this time the FSB officers stood literally around me watching. I don't think I've ever seen anyone as desperate to look at my manhood as the FSB. They tell me the test will be fair, and I can watch the whole process. The technician tells me they'll test for weed, meth, and coke. The sample is placed in the machine. It's negative. I breathed the biggest sigh of relief in the world. I signed a document saying my result was clean, and I'm driven back to the prison to spend my first night there, with 14 to go. On my second day in prison, and the 5th being detained, I suddenly got some good news. I would get my luggage and my passport back. Whenever something comes into the prison, the COs have to check if it's allowed into the cell. And then here comes my luggage with souvenirs and stuff from everywhere from Ireland to China. The CO told me that they had never had a prisoner like me before. I asked if there had ever been another foreigner in the jail, and they stretched their memory to say there had been one French guy before. Although it's interesting that they would say that. Apparently they were not on duty 2 years ago when that very same city, Bijan, arrested another YouTuber, one that I'm sure you've heard of, called Bald and Bankrupt. He was in the same prison for 2 days in 2022. What a wonderful place, doing wonders for the tourism. I was almost in a good mood, going through all my things that I've been carrying for the last 6 months. After all, my bag, my luggage is basically my life. I don't actually have a house. When all of a sudden, an entire squadron of FSB officers shows up. They had come to investigate my luggage, they said. They brought everything. They brought some local English teacher as an interpreter. They brought some guy who could speak really bad Chinese, I guess in case I had any secret Chinese drugs. And then they had me stand with all the officers and take a big picture. You know, a big group photo. You know, one of those photos they place in a newspaper, showing how they caught the local drug kingpin. It was ridiculous. It was so ridiculous that in the moment, as scared as I was, all I could do was just put a big smile on my face, while everyone else had this solemn, we caught the criminal expression. Apparently, they were now somehow sure that I had drugs. They were trying to Brittany grind me. I had no choice but to sit there in the prison and hope they'd be fair. And have to hope that I had not somehow left something in my luggage, because it was literally anything. It was even just traces of marijuana or something like that. That would have been enough to keep me in prison for years. They made me sit for an entire week in the prison wondering this, before they finally sent back my luggage with a note saying that there was no problem. After this, the FSB stopped harassing me for a while. I was left to serve out my sentence. I had to get used to prison life. The prison cell was at least bigger than the ones I had before. There was a sink and a toilet in the room, although in reality the toilet was just a hole in the ground. You were only allowed to shower once a week, so if you didn't want to stink, you had to just wash in the sink. When you actually got to use the shower room, it seemed like you were put there by yourself, so probably not a lot of dropping the soap in Russian prison, if you know what I mean. There was no prison yard with weights like I imagine you'd have in an American prison, or at least that's what I've seen in movies. Exercise time was literally just being let outside to an outdoor cage, and you got to walk in circles. Usually there was ice on the ground, so not the safest thing to do. They put the prisoners together to socialize, but for some reason they always kept me separate. I don't know if this was to protect me or to protect them. Couldn't have them being corrupted by an American spy, I guess. But otherwise, most of the time was just spent in your cell, staring at the wall. I had a cellmate for the first 7 days, a middle-aged guy who had spent 6 years in prison before for daring to have his own marijuana plant in his apartment for personal use. Nice guy though, we got along well. The days were slow, agonizingly slow. There was nothing to do. Every day, twice a day at 8 a.m., 8 p.m., the COs would all come into the cell and make sure nothing was out of place on the wall or floor. I guess to make sure I wasn't digging a hole or something. I started going to bed super early, 8:30, just to make the day go by a little bit faster. And slowly the time passed. The whole time I didn't know if I'd ever get out. I thought if they put me in there for a fake crime, well, they could just invent another one to keep me there. But I got one big break that gave me hope. My family and other people close to me were able to contact the embassy and even set up a lawyer. I was kind of amazed that I could even get a lawyer. The police or courts never mentioned this unless I asked about it. With a lawyer, I was able to appeal both of the supposed crimes I was charged with. And we easily won. The police made many mistakes with setting up their fake crimes. And once I was in a legitimate court, the judge ruled in my favor. The only problem was that, again, this is Russia. Even if you win the appeal, the case is just sent back to the original court and judge. We had to do a retrial, which was unwinnable. And then, after 15 days, finally, my sentence was over. I planned to immediately get out of the prison, go to the nearest airport, and leave that day, anywhere, although the only option was China. But it couldn't be that simple. The FSB didn't let me enjoy just that feeling of relief, walking out of prison as a free man. No, they were, once again, all waiting outside, waiting to bring me to the courthouse. I had to attend a retrial after my successful appeal. They wanted this conviction on my record to ban me from coming back to Russia. It was very important to them. So instead, I spent this day where I was supposed to be going home, in the same courthouse that had convicted me and sent me to prison for 15 days. Predictably, I lost the case. But by then, it was too late to get a new transit visa and get to the airport. So I had to spend one last terrifying night in Bijan, wondering if the police would show up and arrest me again. I wasn't even allowed to check into a hotel because my visa had been canceled. So I had to find a kind of Russian Airbnb and just hide out there for the night. Hello. I just spent the last 18 days in prison, and I'm currently at my office in Bijan. My visa was just canceled, and all I'm hoping to do right now is just get out of this country. Any luck, we'll do that tomorrow. So this is the apartment that I had all up in last night. Because my visa was canceled, I'm not even able to stay in any hotel. I'm literally staying in the same house. I feel like I'm in a movie. Да, широкая siesta. Alright, I was just given what's called a transit visa. I have literally just 2 days to leave the country. There's a flight leaving from the nearest large city, which is called Khabarovsk, and I gotta get there quick, so I'm waiting for a taxi to show up right now. I just want this nightmare to be over. And it won't be over until, sadly, I'm out of Russia. Hey, how you doing? You were never falsely imprisoned in Russia. How you doing?
А это все одно.
One surprising everybody getting on my flight is Chinese. Going to some city in China I've never heard of Chinese. One flight a day. Correction. One flight per week. This is the one. Got to hop on a flight on a Chinese airline I've never heard of. Probably the only flight to Russia. We're about to escape this nightmare.
任何人禁止所犯随手经历中探测器。
We are just moments away from legitimate country. I don't feel like it's over for this flight in the air. Even on a flight between Russia and China, they're still doing the announcements in English. And we were in China. There's never been an American happier to arrive in China than this guy right here. The ordeal is over. I can go back to my life. So we were in a town, a city called Jamsa, a place I'd never heard of until yesterday. Even someone like me who had lived in China for like 6 years, who had traveled all over the Northeast, never heard of Jamsa. But Jamsa had a flight from Khabarovsk. And thank you, Jamsa. I will always appreciate your existence. But now I'm going to leave and go to some bigger city in China and have a big, hearty Chinese meal. Let's enjoy the freedom of China. All the things you're not allowed to bring on a train in China. Fireworks. Me? A grenade. You cannot bring grenades on a train. Or knives, or handguns. And definitely don't bring a knife. Just looking at how ridiculously long my beard got while I was there. They didn't allow you to shave. They didn't allow you to take a shower, actually. Maybe like once a week when you take one. It's crazy. Oh, by the way, like on the flight over, I was expecting it to be like an empty flight. Like who the hell was flying between Khabarovsk and Jamsa? But it turned out that entire flight was full of Chinese workers that had gone over to Russia to build an oil and gas plant. The project was done, and they're all heading home. So it's possible that flight was not only just once a week, it might have been like once a month. Stroke of luck. Not a lot of flights that out of there. What can I say? It's good to be in Shanghai, the city I lived in for 6 years. I thought it would be a good idea to wait a few weeks before I picked up the camera again. In those days, immediately after I escaped from Russia, it's hard to describe exactly how I felt. I faced a few things in my life that have messed with me mentally as much as that did. And over the past few weeks, just focused on relaxing, being with friends, just having fun, traveling, not thinking about any of this. I had to take some time to get back to a normal mindset. Whatever normal is. Apparently normal is just worrying about insignificant things all day, checking your phone 1,000 times a day. I guess that's normal. When I left Russia, I was overwhelmed with a feeling of peace that's almost indescribable. I didn't care when somebody cut off my taxi in traffic. I didn't care if somebody didn't wait in line properly. If something was overpriced, I didn't worry about it. I didn't care about bargaining. I didn't care what some stupid celebrity or politician said in America. It was all meaningless. When I was in prison, when I was locked up, all I wanted to do was just go through those metal bars and see the birds that I heard chirping outside the window. You know, I would have just given anything to take a walk in the park. Feel the sun, my pale face. With no smartphone or electronics in prison, in a way I kind of lost my smartphone addiction. When I came out, I didn't have that urge to check my phone anymore, you know? I felt more like I was living in the present. I went back to some habits that I used to do, but don't really do anymore, like, right?
Ну, чуваки. Если его за нахуй за видео, блядь, где он просто говорит... Сейчас, мы даже найдем это видео, чтобы я точную фразу привел. Оно где-то год назад должно было быть, да? Почему я приехал в Россию, а вам не стоило? Как-то так. А, вам никогда не стоит посещать Россию, но я сделал это в любом случае.
Да, давай.
Короче, вспомните мой стрим, блядь. Слава Украине, вечный позор России. Меня бы там нахуй, блядь. Меня бы там, во-первых, очень долго били бы. А во-вторых, посадили бы, наверное, лет на 20. По русским законам, блядь. И выдрали бы, наверное, половину зубов, блядь. Без анестезии. А может быть, даже вообще убили бы.
Writing. I like writing again. I'm gonna write a book now. Wrote so much already, sitting in that jail cell. Speaking of writing, someone did not check English on this side.
Slippery on rainy days. Be careful to sleep. Rockery waterfall, no climbing.
Be careful to slip. There's a rockery waterfall. So, yeah, be careful. Make sure you slip. Well, that was a good one. Listen, I know a lot of you think I'm insane, kind of dumb, you're going to Russia. And that's fair. I have maybe too high of a risk tolerance. I'll admit that. But I don't go out of my way to risk my life. I'm not going to go and fly into the middle of a war zone in Sudan, for example. I like living. I value my life. I just have a wanderer's soul. That's all it really is. And I have this desire to keep exploring and see every country in the world, eventually. Even though there's no prize waiting at the end. I just love the world. You know what I mean? I grew up without money to travel. But even as a kid, I was always looking at globes, wondering what were in these places, these mysterious places I saw on a map. I love our differences. The differences between different nations, people groups. The real diversity of the world. I love all the different languages, dialects, all the different cultures, all the different geography and history that has shaped the world into the different nations that we have today. I just want to go out there and see all of it. And it's kind of this curiosity that gets me in trouble sometimes. Because not everyone's like that. She's like that. But in a country with a tyrannical government like Russia, speaking different languages, being curious, got me accused of being a spy. And that's tragic. Even in spite of all this, I still love the Russian people. And if this hadn't happened, I would have kept on exploring the country and showing the good side of Russia.
Плохо его научили. Плохо его научили. Надо было его не 2 недели там продержать. Надо было его еще там отпиздить. И, блядь, швабру в очко вставить. Он все еще считает это трагедией.
Exploring. And if this hadn't happened, I would have kept on exploring the country and showing the good side of Russia. The side of Russia.
Good side of Russia. Какая good side of Russia, блядь, чувак? Ты, блядь, просто приехал как турист, нахуй. Тебя посадили на 2 недели блядскую тюрьму. Просто ни за что. Сказали, что ты наркоман, при том, что у тебя не было наркотиков в крови, блядь. Подставили тебя с тем, что ты без паспорта ездишь, блядь. Забрав у тебя документы. Good side of Russia, чувак. Good side of Russia. Какая нахуй good side of Russia, блядь? Там нету good side. Это все равно, что искать good side of Third Reich, блядь. После того, как ты в гестапо посидел, блядь, нахуй, получил, блядь, кучу переломов, блядь, нахуй, и синяков. 2 недели. Good side of Third Reich, блядь.
Russia has now been overshadowed by the atrocities of the government. There were still so many places in Russia I wanted to see, like Lake Baikal, the famous Lake Baikal. Every Russian recommended I go and visit.
Да, Байкал красивый. Но, блядь, Байкал красивый, но там рядом россияне. Типа, это святое место, которое оккупируют россияне. Они не заслужили Байкал, честно говоря.
I wanted to go to Yakutia, the coldest city in the world. I wanted to go over to Sakhalin and the Kuril Islands, islands that used to be Japanese until the Russians took them in World War II. Finally, I wanted to go to Kamchatka, Chukotka, the parts of Russia, the very end of Russia, that looks out on Alaska.
Типа, если россияне вымрут, туда можно приехать, посмотреть, что там такое было. Но до тех пор, не, нахуй надо, это того не стоит.
I guess I'll only ever visit these places in my dreams, because I can never go back there. I'll never feel safe going back to Russia after that. And it just makes me wonder, for the people that put me in jail, are you really happy with this? At worst, I was promoting tourism to your country. Ooh, I made a few jokes once in a while. I mean, listen, I was never going to do propaganda, and I was definitely never going to support the ridiculous war in Ukraine. But overall, I was showing the country in a positive light. And now for all those people who might be considering a trip to Russia, now they're going to see how Russia really treats tourists.
А чувак просто путешественник, просто приехал. То есть это не украинец какой-то, просто американец, блядь. Просто приехал посмотреть, что это, блядь, нахуй там за территория такая. Посиди в тюрьме, блядь. Посиди в тюрьме. Хочешь экскурсию в Россию? Без тюрьмы она будет неполная, чувак. Без тюрьмы будет неполная. И знаешь что? Просто дополнительный бонус. Ты будешь сидеть там не 12 часов. Ну просто, чтобы тебе не показалось, что это понарошку.
All you've done is confirm everyone's worst fears about Russia. You did all this for what? To get a promotion? You would have been happy with me sitting in prison for years and my life ruined, so that what? You get an extra $500 per month, so that you can be in Russian media, claim.
Extra $5 a month. Ой, блядь. Ну, на самом деле, да, действительно. Я так разозлился, блядь, на тех мусоров, которые посадили моих друзей. Но они посадили их за более серьезный проступок. Те были, блядь, закладчиками. То есть они закладывали, блядь, наркоту. Но сели они, блядь, нахуй на серьезный срок. Ну, то есть на такой срок можно попасть, блядь, если ты человека убил.
That you caught an American spy, an American drug dealer. Absolute scum. No. You disgraced your country. You disgraced.
Но, с другой стороны, по большей части Россия их вынудила. То есть, если бы там была работа для них. То есть, это были не самые долбоебы полные. Типа, мне с ними было интересно. А если бы у них была возможность нормально зарабатывать, я не думаю, что они были бы закладчиками. Мы с ними о наркотиках вообще почти не разговаривали. Никогда. То есть у нас были интересы по футболу, блядь, по многим вещам, ну, таким пацанским. А по итогу, когда я уехал, типа, через пару лет они сели за наркоту, блядь, на 7 лет. Причем село сначала двое, потом еще третий сел. Через где-то 5 лет. И, короче, вышел только один из тюрьмы. То есть, прикол вот в чем, да, то есть, прошло уже где-то 8 или 9 лет. Вышел из тюрьмы только один. Второй, блядь, поехал на СВО, типа как оккупант ебучий. И сдох там. И приехал домой в гробу, блядь. А третий, блядь, сидит до сих пор. Ему просто новое обвинение выдали, блядь. Что он там что-то... Ну, короче, блядь, какую-то, блядь, зэковскую, блядь, банду, блядь, делает вот эту ауешную, блядь, всю тему, нахуй, арестантскую. И, короче... А знаете почему? Просто, блядь, цвет кожи зарешал. Он, блядь, ебаный кореец. Этнический. Ну, кореец сидит, блядь. Сидит, блядь, всю жизнь, нахуй. А тот, который вышел, он был белый. Он отделался 7 годками, блядь, а этот, блядь, будет сидеть, наверное, лет 20. Пока его там, блядь, не убьют, нахуй. Или пока он там не сдохнет, блядь, от туберкулеза.
I'm under no illusions that the country I'm standing in right now doesn't have some of the same issues that Russia does. I will admit, I'm a lot more familiar with China than I am with Russia. Spent a lot more time here. Perhaps that does add a bit of bias.
Может, он в конце концов решит, блядь, нахуй, что у него есть шанс, блядь, на то, чтобы, блядь, вылезти из тюрьмы, блядь, и пойдет, блядь, русским солдатам, блядь, убивать украинцев и сдохнет. Ну, я так думаю, что этот кореец, он не такой долбоеб. Он знает о том, что случилось с тем ебанатом, который подперся сюда. То есть он вернулся, блядь, в гробу, блядь, где-то через месяц. То есть, ну, подышал немножко свежим воздухом, и все. И теперь под землей на 2 метра, блядь, под землей, блядь.
How I view the two places. Over the past year, surprising even to me, it's become popular on YouTube. All the travel bloggers that started going to China and showing the nice infrastructure, the organization, talking about how the West misunderstands China. And don't get me wrong, I'm actually happy about this. These are things I knew about China 7 years ago. When people try to paint China as just, this singular evil force that does nothing good, I didn't think that was fair. But those same bloggers that come here and make their carbon copy video of how China is not what you imagine it to be, don't ever mention that right here, Ulaanbaatar 2 years ago. So the biggest protests in modern China's history took place. It was those protests that finally ended the zero COVID lockdown policies of the country. People that gathered here, some of the bravest people I ever imagined.
Если бы у меня была какая-нибудь достойно оплачиваемая работа, где не нужно сильно много руками работать, я, скорее всего, этот канал бы никогда не завел. Ну, тут слишком очень мало денег. Ну, то есть я не могу даже МРОТ получить в виде донатов и, блядь, AdSense. На это невозможно жить. Была бы у меня хорошая работа, я вряд ли бы когда-нибудь стал бы делать эти мультики. Просто делал бы работу, да и все.
Ulaanbaatar is the name of the capital of Xinjiang province, the province of the Uyghurs. It was there during the COVID lockdowns, when China was still doing a zero COVID policy, that a fire took place. Many people died. The people here in Shanghai decided to come to this street and eventually mobilize into a much more massive protest.
Это отстойно. Я популярный человек, честно говоря. Но эта популярность мне просто боком выходит, да и все. Очень много людей меня ненавидят. Непонятно за что. Хотя они подписаны на меня.
Just mentioning that makes me feel uncomfortable, because you never know, it messes with my ability to keep coming here. But the people that participated in those protests.
Я могу понять, когда ты ненавидишь человека, который там реально, блядь, сделал тебе какой-то реальный вред, да, то есть, например, избил тебя и сломал тебе нос. Я ненавижу человека, который мне сломал нос. Я могу понять, когда ты ненавидишь человека за то, что он убил там, ну не знаю, кого-то из твоих родственников. Но я никого не убивал. Все, что я делал, это мультики. Вот и все. То есть хуйня, которую ты смотришь и смеешься. И люди по-серьезному приходят и такие желают мне умереть. Моим родителям смерти желают. Желают, чтобы на мой дом упала ракета, блядь. Пизданутые куски дерьма. Дикари ебучие. Люди, для которых, интернет не изобретался. То есть для них, блядь, не знаю, пещера, блядь. Они даже огонь не развести не в состоянии, я уверен. То есть это вот те самые люди, которые, блядь, если костер потух, да, то есть для них все пиздец. То есть они вымирают. Слышали историю, блядь, о том, что было, блядь, с чуваками, которые не досмотрели за костром? То есть их тупо изгоняли из деревни, это было равносильно убийству. Потому что человек один там не выживал. То есть это вот такие вот, блядь. А огонь у них появлялся, знаете как, блядь? Это не они, блядь, развели его, да? То есть это, блядь, просто когда-то ебануло в дерево молния, блядь, нахуй. И устроила пожар, блядь. И они от этого, блядь, взяли, блядь, загоревшуюся палку, блядь, нахуй. И так 7000 лет могло, блядь. Есть пепелище, блядь, которое по 7000 лет, блядь, вокруг костра, блядь. То есть огромная, блядь, такая... Огромный столб пепла, блядь, над которым просто грунт поднимался. Костер, который горит 7000 лет, прикиньте. Вот это Россия.
So now that I've told you that story, where do I go after this? Well, I gotta get back on the road. That's where I belong. I gotta finish my trip from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. And I was almost done. But honestly, all that isn't that important. What's important is that I'm still here. I'm really sorry for making you worry if I did. I'm really incredibly happy to still be here with all of you. You really have no idea. I've now been to prison. Prison. That is not something I thought I would ever say in my entire life. It gives me more street cred, I guess. But I really hope it's not something you'll ever have to say. Because freedom is one of those things that you don't fully appreciate until it's gone. I'll see you next time.
Вы отправились в Россию, чтобы найти настоящую Россию. Я думаю, вам это удалось. Ну да, в принципе, да. Да, возможно, я не смог бы вернуться в прошлое. Ну, в смысле, имеется в виду... Конечно, я не смог бы вернуться в прошлое, потому что это нарушило бы законы физики. И потому что нет машины времени. Но, если бы у меня предоставилась такая возможность, теоретическая, возможно, я не смог бы вытерпеть то, что я вытерпел в России. Я сильно изменился эмоционально. И то, что раньше не вызывало у меня никаких эмоций в России, сейчас бы вызвало бы просто очень негативный ответ. Например, я помню, что нас в детском лагере, блядь, заставили выучить гимн России и петь его по утрам. Я бы никогда этого не стал делать. Вы че? То есть, если бы мне снова пришлось бы оказаться в этом лагере, я бы сказал, пошли нахуй, я поехал домой. Нахуй вашу Россию, блядь. Хотите, я вам украинский гимн спою? Если вам хочется услышать гимн. Настоящей страны. Настоящей свободной страны. За свои деньги петь русский гимн, да пошли вы нахуй. Вот что бы я сказал. Я, блядь, набью морду любому, кто, блядь, скажет мне петь гимн. Возможно, меня бы за это отпиздили. Может быть, у меня был бы к этому моменту сломан не только нос, но и выбиты зубы. Но все-таки я дрался 55 раз, так что вряд ли меня бы отпиздили сильнее, чем эти 55 раз. Возможно, я бы кому-то сломал нос. Но мне бы точно не понравилось драться еще 55 раз. Блять. Я думаю, следующая драка, которая у меня произойдет, будет последней. Я просто убью человека, который на меня нападет. Я хожу с ножом. Я ебанулся. Ну, типа, я ненавижу людей, которые меня бьют. Настолько, что, типа, следующий человек, который на меня нападет, который меня ударит, просто получит нож в горло, блядь. Типа, я устал от этого. Прям по-честному. Может, мне действительно лучше сидеть дома, где нет других людей, где я один. На Украине мне драться почти не приходилось, то есть 5 раз всего. И то, ну, то есть большая часть в школе. А 2 остальные драки, это были драки с сестрой. И я их не начинал, если что. То есть последняя драка, которая чуть у меня не состоялась, она была с отцом. Да, то есть я его чуть не зарезал. Я схватился за нож, и я подумал, блядь. Я уже просто представил себе эту картину. Мне так мерзко стало. Но отец понял, что я, типа, держу в руке нож. Типа, решил, что это не хорошая ситуация, в которой он бы хотел со мной драться. А я, ну, типа, подумал, блядь, не хочу драться. Я хочу съебаться. Ну, то есть он просто стоял между мной и выходом. И говорит, давай драться. А мне не понравилась эта мысль. Потому что он, блядь, намного больше меня. Кстати, американцам рекомендуют не пить никогда с русскими, потому что в такой момент эта ситуация становится опасной. Типа, вы можете приезжать в Россию, то есть это я еще в 2018 году услышал. Вы можете приезжать в Россию, вы можете там путешествовать по туристическим местам, но никогда не пейте с русским, потому что вас могут зарезать.
Не сложно.
Russia, a country everyone knows. After the start of the invasion of Ukraine, 2022, sanctions followed, the borders were closed. A new kind of Cold War began. I've never really been scared to cross the border, but I'm an American. And going into Russia in 2024, I was very, very nervous. But I wanted to see Russia and meet its people. You can call it foolish or selfish or whatever you will, but I wanted to go. And this is my journey. And this is my journey.
Это он где?
There's Russia. Across everywhere.
Нарва, Эстония. Че в куртке дома? 20 градусов в хате. Мне прохладно сидеть так.
Right here, you can see prominently displayed the flag of the European Union and Estonia. This would welcome people that are crossing this little bridge with a just clear custom on the Russian side, as in, welcome to the EU, welcome to somewhere different. But then, just across over there, on that castle, which is actually pretty cool, one of the coolest borders I've ever seen, you can see a giant Russian flag. The only thing that divides the two countries is this river and this bridge. And apparently 8 hours of waiting time. So you can see Russians walking across the bridge here. They've surely already gone through the passport check. It's basically only Russians going back and forth. And consequently, almost everyone in this little city on Estonia's border with Russia is Russian, or they're of Russian descent. They have Estonian passports, but their primary language is Russian, so they get home with their friends and family. Люди живет в этой городе Россия или Эстония? Man, Estonian is a weird language. Looking at this.
Ты тот самый Янур, который делал мульт, насрал в рюкзак? Да, я тот самый Янур, который насрал в рюкзак. Только насрал в рюкзак — это история из интернета.
Looks almost
Рисовал мультик, который насрал в рюкзак.
like some weird spelling of Spanish. Culinaria, pagar. Of course, you got the Russian written under it. Fuck the actual people that are living here. But it still looks super nice because we're in Estonia. Estonia's a beautiful country. It's almost too nice to make vlogging, you know. By the way, Bolt, the maker of these little scooter things, also a competitor to Uber. That is an Estonian company. I've seen Bolt in Africa, in Asia, I've seen them around the world. Estonia, startup capital. They also created Skype, a few other things. A bunch of shy, quiet people sit indoors working on computers. You can't help it. Okay, here you have some Russian rubles. I've never actually seen the currency before. You actually have a little currency station right here, right next to the border, that everybody can exchange their money. Obviously, using money in Russia is not going to be easy once we get over there. They're cut off from the SWIFT system, so no Western credit cards, no dollars, no euros. That's why they have a little exchange shop right here, so you can exchange all your money. And I've heard that at the border, they don't want you to bring over $1 million euros.
И короче, когда последний раз выезжал из России, блядь, где-то нахуй за 10 километров до границы какой-то пидорас тормознул нашу машину. Увидел, короче, европейские номера. Или, по-моему, украинские, нет. По-моему, были европейские все-таки. И, короче, блядь, такое... Че, показывайте документы, блядь, типа водителю. Ну, я такой сижу, да, типа нормально. Водителем был мой батя. Батя показывает русский паспорт, типа, все нормально. Говорит, а теперь, блядь, все, кто в машине, показывайте документы. Я говорю, схуяли, блядь. Типа, я пассажир, блядь. Почему я должен тебе показывать документы? Ты гаишник. Это не я сказал, кстати, это батя сказал. Я тогда решил, блядь, ну не буду сильно выебываться. Короче, батя говорит, нет, не показывай, блядь, это гаишник. Почему он должен проверять мои документы? Он говорит, показывай документы, или мы поедем сейчас в ментовку. Ну, я, короче, показал, у меня украинский паспорт был. Показал ему паспорт, он говорит, что ты тут с украинским паспортом делаешь? Я говорю, я, типа, выезжаю из России, типа, в Украину. Ну, типа, хочу покинуть вашу страну. Ты мне препятствуешь в этом. И, короче, он такой, ну, какая-то полная хуйня, мне что-то это не нравится, говорит. Типа, поехали в участок. Было 4 ночи, блядь. То есть этот хуесос, блядь, сидел, блядь, где-то в 4 ночи, блядь. На дороге, блядь, караулил, блядь, чтобы кто-то, кто едет, блядь, нахуй через границу, блядь, типа, короче, штрафчик себе заработать. Донатик. С дороги, вот так вот. Короче, приехали в эту ебаную, блядь, мусарню, блядь. Там, блядь, ну, практически никого не было. Ебаная ночь. Короче, они говорят, ну, сейчас вы где-то будете, блядь, нахуй до утра сидеть. ждать, пока, блядь, приедут все остальные. Что-то там позвонили каким-то пидорасам еще, блядь, мусорским. Эти хуесосы начали, блядь, ну, что-то там, блядь, говорить, вот, блядь, что-то ты часто в Россию приезжаешь, а я, короче, ну, так, чтобы не нарушать, блядь, эти, блядь, миграционные, блядь, законы, блядь, этой пидорасии, я, короче, выезжал, блядь, на 80-й день, блядь, из этой оконченной страны и заезжал потом обратно, после, чтобы там, блядь, соответствовать всем этим хуйням. И этот что-то доебался, что-то ты часто сюда ездишь, что ты тут делаешь? Я говорю, ну, типа, с девушкой, типа, встречаюсь, вся хуйня. Он говорит, ну, короче, с тебя штраф. Говорит, 2000 рублей, блядь. А это 18-й год, нахуй. Не, уже 19-й, кстати. 18-й год, весь 18-й год я был в России. Или нет? Я приехал в июне, короче, я приехал в июне в Россию. Где-то 13 июня я приехал. И выехал я 1 апреля, короче, я был уже в Украине. Вот. И, короче, это было где-то, короче, конец марта, получается. То есть последний день марта. И, короче, он там сел, ну, короче, начал ебать мозги, типа, документы, хуенты. А батя он, блядь, сильно ну, заебал, говорит, ты, Гантон, блядь, ты охуел, что ли, блядь? Он вообще в машине сидел, блядь. Тебя ебет, блядь, нахуй, что у него там, блядь, нахуй с документами, блядь? Ты ебаный гаишник, блядь. И говорю, батя, ну, блядь, успокойся, я не хочу тут просидеть, блядь, ебаную неделю, блядь, пока они, блядь, тут эту хуйню делают. А батя это сильно заебало, типа... Ну, короче, что-то я говорю, блядь, хорошо, я ваш штраф оплачу, только у меня сейчас денег нет. Типа, сниму денег и оплачу. Выпишите мне все свои штрафы, блядь, и типа, я как пересеку границу, обязательно вам заплачу. Они, короче, что-то сразу после того, как услышали, что деньги им поступят прямо, блядь, в ебаный кошелек, смягчились такие. Не, ну раз такое дело, то в принципе, вот вам, короче, бумажка, да. Я говорю, как оплатить? Типа, вся хуйня. Он говорит, ну вот, типа, надо будет на госуслуги зайти, блядь, вся хуйня. И, короче, и там, блядь, вот, короче, вот в этой бумажке, блядь, где-то вот по такому-то номеру, блядь, надо будет оплатить. Я говорю, хорошо. Ну, мы свободны? Он говорит, ну, в принципе, да. Мы сели и просто съебали, блядь, оттуда. Я приехал в Украину, блядь, и, знаете, даже какое-то время я реально думал, блядь, оплатить этот штраф. Но потом подумал, да нахуй надо, блядь. Какие-то пидорасы, блядь, какой-то ебаный штраф выписали, блядь. Это еще до войны было, ну, то есть полномасштабки, да, то есть это 19-й год. Я думаю, какие-то пидорасы выписали какой-то ебаный штраф, блядь. С меня за этот штраф никогда в жизни не спросят. То есть какой-то чучмек, блядь, который, блядь, просто в какой-то ебаной деревне, блядь, сидел, блядь, караулил, блядь, в 4 часа утра, блядь, нахуй. Мне выписали штраф за что? За то, что я сидел в машине, блядь, по всем документам все нормально было, да, то есть я сидел в машине с украинскими документами, блядь, загранпаспортом украинским. И человек решил меня, ну, просто нагреть на бабло. Короче, полные пидоры.
You see that all these people are waiting on this huge ass line. They've been here for hours, up to 8 hours. Just the checks take very long, looking for any kind of contraband. I'm gonna try and go through that tomorrow morning as an American citizen. Let's hope for the best. Good morning. On the border. That's the entrance to the Lithuanian customs. Crossing to Russia. This is the line. I've been on this line since 8 a.m. It's not 12 yet. So much fun. As you can imagine, in a situation like this, ultimately there's people that just show up and then you can like buy their place from them, pay some kind of bribe to go up on the line faster. Where are these people? I didn't find them. And all of a sudden everybody's moving. The line is frozen for like 4 hours. Alright, so I've seen how the process works. I think like these guys have a group on Telegram, and then roughly like, hey, we're standing right here on the line, and then they stop the spot, people come up, they change places, and then like the police sellers, want to call them that, they go back to the line, start the whole process over again. I've seen this happen in front of me multiple times now. A little bit frustrating. Also, in related news, the founder of Telegram, Pavel Durov, was just arrested in France a couple days ago. You should probably date this video by the time it's released, but yeah, Telegram. Things get interesting. Telegram. Things get interesting. Holy just made it across the border. And way past the time now, this second. On the Russian side, they didn't really question me at all. Just saw the visa, checked it. They took an extra 5 minutes to have me sit down and then approved me. On the Estonian side, that was where all the waiting period. It took like 5 hours trying to get to the passport check in Estonia. And then the guards carefully went through my passport. They were checking the real passport. Wanted to know if I went to Belarus. Always been in Russia. First time. All right, we did. Gotta go catch a bus. Now there's a bus to St. Petersburg. Let's go. Alright, just arrived at St. Petersburg, which will be our first location in Russia. So this is St. Petersburg. St. Petersburg, Russia. I know there's a lot of people watching this that aren't happy that I came to this country, and I completely understand. But now that we're here, let's go to school. Alright, so by pure coincidence, the hotel that the travel agency booked for me was right across the street where the bus ended up. Considering how big the city St. Petersburg is, that is a massive coincidence. Actually, just got my haircut at the barber. That's at the foot of the apartments. They're playing M&M. A bunch of Central Asian dudes laughing M&M. Welcome to Russia. And as you can see, there's just like this plaza, got all these stores on the side, got an Italian restaurant over here, no idea the quality. It's very different from Belarus. There's no strip club, that's my hotel this time. Managed to just get a new eSIM and a Russian phone number, which I will soon need. So yeah, the way this worked, again, because I couldn't pay this hotel internationally, I had to have a travel agency help me make the booking, and then I arrived here, and then I paid in cash. Cash that I obtained at the Estonian border by changing my euros to Russian rubles. And this is the room. Comes with the kitchen. I like that. I actually like to cook when I'm traveling. You know, if I was just eating garbage processed food every single day while I'm traveling, not be able to make these videos. You gotta stay healthy. Not bad. $100. Would prefer the $30 hotel room that I got in Belarus, but this one also probably won't have bedbugs, so that's a win for St. Petersburg. Alright, I just spent the entire morning trying to set up a Russian phone number and a Russian bank account, because without that, it's very hard to pay people here. You need to make mobile payments. And I have neither a phone number or a bank account. Anyway, let's find a way to St. Petersburg. As you can see, we're in the heart of the city here. Pretty busy. St. Petersburg, well, I've heard it's the best city in Russia, so. Money exchange. What is this so sketchy? So the currencies we can exchange. Dollars, euros, Belarus rubles, and Chinese yuan. I have all 4. Need to get the ruble though. Apparently I have to wait my turn and then go into one of the 2 pastas over here. That's where the actual money exchange goes on. So I just had a bunch of my bills rejected. Okay. So apparently, if you exchange money in Russia, they are very strict with quality of bills, of the dollars, of the euros. If there's like any kind of marking, any kind of tear, they all look pristine. Apparently they got rejected, which I did not expect before coming here. Listen, I'm not complaining. I knew this was going to be a challenge coming here. I'm ready. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk to some of the major, I guess, tourist sites of St. Petersburg. Very historically significant. The Peter and Paul Fortress, Foundation of St. Petersburg. And, alright, apparently you can speak in Russian. Magic. What's it? Oh, did you know what? I'm probably not going to go to that, but I just want to talk to a Russian witch. So St. Petersburg is known as the most beautiful city in Russia. And similar to Paris, it was
Beautiful city in Russia. Здесь какое-то слово лишнее. То есть, либо beautiful, либо Russia.
designed to be that way.
Чувак, beautiful city это не Russia. Либо city in Russia, либо beautiful city not in Russia.
In 1700, Peter the Great, one of the most famous Russians ever, was very great. He decided that Russia needed to level up. They needed to build a city that was up to European standards, and people from all over Europe would want to come and visit. And so, you have lovely St. Petersburg, with its canals, with its statues, with very clear, defined, honest statues. You have museums. There's like a very coherent design to all the buildings. St. Petersburg is much more of a European-feeling city. It's probably the most European city in Russia. So, if you come in here, hope to go on some kind of Soviet adventure, relive the Soviet Union days, this is not the top choice for that. However, due to recent events and these sanctions in place, you will definitely feel you're in a foreign country. You will be reminded of it with every transaction. There you go, this is the Leon Trotsky Bridge. Throw him a Novi camera? Okay, good luck. I have a new camera. Yep, there you go. Most, the Leon Trotsky Bridge. Leon Trotsky almost was the supreme leader of the Soviet Union. Nobody got to turn leaders, but he almost won out over Stalin. But in the end, he lost the power struggle. He was banished from the Soviet Union and then died basically in a ditch in Mexico, as many a great man does. One can only speculate how different history would have been if Trotsky came to power instead of Stalin. On one hand, Trotsky was a much more fervent communist. He was all on board with the ideology. He was driving it. On the other hand, he was far less cruel than Stalin. Most people. It's kind of hard to top Stalin. We're coming up now on the Peter and Paul Fortress, the very first building ever constructed in St. Petersburg. I think we're attracting a lot of attention from speaking English to a camera. But anyway, let's get over here. Let's see the beginning. The first building, the capital of Russia for more than 2 centuries. Это что? О, у меня камера. Спасибо. For more than 2 centuries. Это что?
Персональное фото. Дай мне сделать пару картинок тебя.
У меня камера. Спасибо. один билет в метро Павловский собор. Да. Окей. Is that it? Yes, is that it? Извините. Every transaction I'm doing in Russia is like this. Hoping they have change. Let's go be a tourist for a minute. There go the Chinese tourist again. Getting closer. We're only one country removed. Hang on. That's a lot. China is probably one of Russia's biggest tourist groups at this point. This fortress and all these surrounding buildings served as the palace of the Tsar of Russia during Imperial Russia, period before the Soviet Union. A lot of people think Russian history begins and ends with the Soviet Union, but no, there was a lot of stuff going on before that. And during this time, while the Russian Tsars lived lavishly here, there was also a small building reserved for political prisoners. In that building came a rallying cry for the revolutionaries, for Lenin and Trotsky. They used it to rile up the people, lead the revolution, and overthrow the government. The Tsars of Russia had their own secret police, who would monitor the mail going between political enemies of the state. They would monitor political activities, make sure nothing was brewing. All these things began long before the Soviet Union. With that said, you could argue the Tsars were a bit more lenient than the Soviet Union. I mean, just like Soviet Union leaders were different in how harsh they were on political dissidents, so were the Tsars. Vladimir Lenin, for example, went to a gulag in Siberia, but he was able to bring his radical literature, he was able to write covertly, pass messages to his confidant.
Знаешь, Ленин действительно заслуживал, блядь, чтобы его держали в ГУЛАГе, блядь. Типа, это, блядь, натуральный террорист, нахуй.
Which was ultimately the Tsar's undoing. Cool. Is that a Confederate flag up there? I can't really. The funny thing is, like, if there was a Confederate flag hanging out there, I wouldn't be surprised. Извините, ты знаешь, этот флаг, что флаг?
Английский флаг. Английский.
Английский. О, so раньше... Ссылка.
Морской.
Okay. Спасибо. There we go. Angliski flag, I guess that's... I have no idea. I'll look it up later. I'll put it like on the screen right here. There you go. That's what the flag is. Also, my Russian they still sell that I really just asked. Is that up before palace? I'm trying to say, you know, like former kingdom or something like Russian grammar's no joke. It's not easy. I've never encountered a language like Russian before. I'll still take 4 tones and 10,000 characters over Russian grammar any day. Here's the Russian prison. This might be a recreation, St. Petersburg was bombed in World War II. But, yeah, this is where the little prisoners were held. And Trotsky was actually held in this very prison. Lenin and Trotsky had convinced the public that there were thousands upon thousands of people being held right here in this prison. In reality, it was estimated to be only about 100 people. And they weren't that badly treated. That is why perception is everything. And that is why controlling the narrative is very important. Wow, look at that view. Definitely worth the €7 ticket price. Come in.
Органин на русской играет.
There you go, the Russian beach. As close as it gets. Well, he's gonna fly to Zanzibar, which is the last time I interacted with a whole lot of Russians. Oh. And right across from the...
Это не пляж, это грязюка, блядь.
You have Burger King. McDonald's may be gone, but Burger King didn't go anywhere. Burger King has profit margins to maintain. Actually, it's one of the coolest Burger Kings I've ever seen. Got like outdoor kiosks, order your food, and enjoy the sunshine. These 2 days of sunshine a year in St. Petersburg. For the record, I actually think McDonald's pulling out Russia like they did was kind of stupid. You know, I get the purpose of what they're doing, but wouldn't it be smarter to like stay in the country, control the profits? It's definitely not like scientific analysis, but I feel like there's more women walking around than men. Alright, this place has my curiosity. 24-hour cafeteria. It says it's got borscht for like 50 cents. Let's go check it out. Pretty hungry, but it really is a celebrated cafeteria. You get a tray. Then you have all these options over here. Bread. That borscht is simply rolls. Something like that. Нью-Йорк.
Это куриная котлета, чикен. А есть еще куриная другая, еще одна. Тоже чикен.
Это водка? So, in total, for about $6. We got this chicken thing, potatoes, a giant dessert, 2 bowls of borscht. I don't like 2 bowls. I want to try different ones. And some more compote, fruit juice, and a shot of vodka. That is the most Russian thing I've ever seen. Literally, a bottle of vodka at the restaurant, just to get attention. I know the name of this dish, but I don't know what I should say. Say it's sanctified organ? Oh, it's good. Okay. Я пойду, it's good. What is it? Oh, okay. You love it? Лучше говорить, давай. Не знаю. In case that wasn't enough, they even have a 24-hour bar over here. What a wondrous place. I have another friend who's come to the table. Heard of New York. Oh, okay. I'm understanding like 50% was gone online, but... Never got a shot.
Нашел какого-то, походу, минтяру, блядь. И сел с ним бухать.
Не сложно. Я могу купить это. Это Ford? А, окей. Американец машина. Окей. So, you drive truck? Окей, работает.
Трак-драйвер. Короче, этот, блядь. Дальнобойщик.
Oh, your car. Okay. Wow. As if he drove a lot of it. He told me, no, I drive that. Okay, that was a very Russian experience. I don't think you can get any more Soviet than that. A cafeteria, everybody's eating the same things. Oh, hey. There's my friend. Okay. Am I allowed to say I'm enjoying Russia? I'm enjoying Russia. I love that my Russian homie over there, Dima, thought it was very important to tell me that I could go to the supermarket and buy that bottle of liquor for only $2. That was the biggest piece of advice he had for me about traveling in Russia. I'm right, Metro. I came in the wrong way or something. That's the entrance over there. Okay. Apparently that's the ticket. I'm an idiot or slightly intoxicated. I finally figured out that ticket was the point. Oh, look at this. Except for this metro, it's kind of unique. You can't see the train coming at all. It's going to show up and the doors.
Ну, пизда мне что сказать. Понял.
Pop open. I don't know if this is the same Petersburg metro, but I've never seen that before. This November's election in the U.S. will seriously impact whether the U.S. decides to continue aiding or drop their support for Ukraine. On one hand, you've got Donald Trump saying that Ukraine is gone, all because they refuse to make a deal. This November's election in the U.S. will seriously impact whether the U.S. decides to continue aiding or drop their support for Ukraine. On one hand, you've got Donald Trump saying that
Trump says time to end Ukrainian war. Так ты еще и трампист, ну ты долбоеб, чел. Блять, они трамписта посадили.
Ukraine is gone.
Не, но с другой стороны, Трамп все-таки обещает то, что обещал то, что он закончит эту войну.
All because they refuse to make a deal with Putin, as reported by the government of Russia. And on the other hand, you have Kiev warning that the surrender of Ukraine would cause the West to collapse. It feels like this is all being driven by someone with a narrative that they want you to believe. The problem is, people tend to only read the first article they come across, missing out on the bigger picture, which is why I'm really excited about Ground News. Their app and website really help you sort through the chaos and find out the truth. Where you get your news from, including sources you understand how more biased, especially during the elections. For that, deeply divide my QR code so they know I sent you. Unlimited access to all their feed channels. So thank you. Alright, so we are now in the central train station of St. Petersburg.
Ну, наверное, он уже разочаровался в Трампе, потому что он делает полную хуйню.
I'll take our first big train journey in Russia. We're going to
Учитывая, что он сидел в русской тюряге, блядь.
the big city, Moscow. But look how cool this looks.
А может и нет.
That is definitely Soviet. And there's Burger King. Burger King, you sneaky devil. This is the prettiest looking vending machine I've ever seen. It's like you need to save tickets if you can't hang. Huh. It says that I need a Visa card. No. Rejected. Rejected by sanctions. This is very cool. You have a map of all the different stations that you can go to on a train. I'm pretty sure some of these connections have been cut at this point. You can see center, Moscow, Moscow, right there. And then just above it, St. Petersburg, to the north. And you got stuff like Tallinn and Estonia. Used to be part of the Soviet Union. And Moscow's virtually to have all the Ukrainian cities over here as well. And then over here you have cities way out in Siberia. Novosibirsk, and then, oh wow, you actually have like cities in Kazakhstan, right there, Astana. I wonder how far we're going. I don't really know myself. Alright, my train is apparently somewhere up there. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Last one. Okay, that's great. Going great. This is an older looking train.
План не удался, классовой старый зажиматель написал, что меня нет, и еще рассказала, что я скипал дни прокуливал. Из-за чего мать мне таких пизделей вставила, что я аж испугался, меня решили всего. Но не телефона. Понятно.
Is it? I believe this cabin is for 2 people, but I think I got it just myself.
Знаешь, я про таких же ебланов, как ты сейчас считаю. Которые ебланили, блядь, и типа... В конце концов получили пиздов. Перекири ее с Ориенту. Короче, чувак написал книгу про разъебая из Мексики. Причем написал ее в 1700-х годах. Да, то есть в начале, получается, это когда? 18 века, да? У меня хорошие оценки, бля. А это похуй. Там есть даже цитата, блядь. Я ее сейчас, наверное, все-таки прочитаю. Сейчас я достану книгу. Фернандес де Сарди, Перекирио Сергенко. Как раз про таких ебланов, которые хуйней страдают. Получают пиздов. Вот эта книга валяется старостью. Ебать, сколько мне книг уже пришлось прочитать. О, страницу. Ну и глубже ты, Периков, воскликнул Пилайло. Разве ты не видишь, что эти искушения, посылаемые нечистым, дабы отвратить тебя от столь благочестивого дела? Ты боишься стать священником, чтобы не впасть в грех, но будь уверен, дружок, миряне даже женатые не спасены от него. Да кроме того, в чем, собственно, дело? Впрочем, не хочу посвящать тебя в этой части. Получай сам, дружище, получай сам, но не слушай всяких россказней. Потом же меня благодарить будешь за добрый совет. Я расстался с моим... Так. М. Как сложно приводить статы из книг. Ёб твою мать. Тут фраза... тут Ctrl-F не нажмешь. Блять. Тут надо читать. Бля, у меня глаза сухнут. Всем доподлинно известно, что большинство студентов ходят в университет вовсе не для того, чтобы чему-то научиться, а чтобы поболтать о том о сём с товарищами. Однако тот, у кого нет положенного свидетельства о посещении лекции, не получит степени, будь он в богословии сильнее самого святого Фомы. А коли такое свидетельство у него есть, он станет бакалавром, хотя и не знает, что такое Бог по определению Падре Рипальди. Но так уж здесь повелось. Так же будет и у нас с тобой. Для отдыха время найдется. Занятия в университете я пропускаю разве что изредка. Бля, да что такое? Зато из коллеги удираю частенько. По воскресеньям, по четвергам, по большим праздникам занятий там у нас не бывает. Да и один и то и 2 дня я прихватываю. Так что, как ты видишь, живу не тушу. Точно так же должен поступать и ты, коли хочешь, чтобы изучение богословия тебя не слишком угнетало. Не отставай от меня и тяни со своего отца сколько сможешь деньжат, и поверь мне, ты не только заживешь в свое удовольствие, но приобретешь кое-какой лоск, а то, я как замечаю, ты просто неотесанный мексиканец, и мне хочется вывести тебя в люди. Ты станешь ходить со мной в дома изящных сеньорит, общение, в обществе которых я нередко провожу вечера. Ты научишься танцевать, плясать, беседовать с различными людьми. Кроме того, я введу тебя в гостиные и сделаю так, чтобы ты общался с дамами, ибо общение с ними приносит большой почет. Наконец, я научу тебя играть на бильярде, а также в малилью, тресилью, басигу и альбур, ибо все эти навыки необходимы для изящного, просвещенного юноши. И мы будем весело проводить время. Через год ты это поймешь и поблагодаришь меня за добрые дружеские услуги. Предложение Пилайло, обрисовавшего мой будущий образ жизни, показалось мне чуть ли не откровением свыше, ибо я помышлял лишь о праздности и развлечениях, а посему я поблагодарил моего приятеля за дружеский интерес к моим успехам и с того же дня избрал его своим наставником и опекуном. Таких ебланов дохуя было. Всегда. Когда-то они убегали от работы в церковь. Сейчас все хотят стать блогерами. Что-то у меня реально шея затекла, прям по-честному. Ой. Я думаю, что это не очень подходит мне. Быть монахом. Я думаю, я скорее подхожу для женитьбы. Бля. Да, чувак. Я думаю, это пиздец как забавно. Я не священник, я человек. Мы не одинаковы. Но вы оба проебываете уроки. Знаешь, чем кончилось его проебывание уроков? Ему пришлось записываться в монахов, блять. Я еще даже не посмотрел, чем это закончилось. Но там у таких людей был один выход. Виселица. Типа 300 лет назад, если ты преступник, 15 суток в тюрьме, да кто будет тратиться на тебя? Веревка, чувак, веревка. Выпрямление веревки. Вот чем занимаются люди 300 лет назад. Есть где-то помятая веревка. Кто-то работает шеей, чтобы ее выпрямить. Знаешь, есть целая книга, которая посвящена тому, как вешать людей. И это не просто какая-то, там, не знаю, книга для всяких, не знаю, убийц или, там, не знаю, маньяков. Нет, это, блядь, государственная книга. Из этой великобританской. И она не просто так существует. Короче, ты не можешь просто взять и повесить человека на веревку любой длины. В какой-то момент у него просто оторвется башка. Если ты не хочешь, чтобы его башка оторвалась, или если ты не хочешь, чтобы он слишком долго висел на веревке и дергался, то тебе нужно подбирать расстояние. То есть, на котором будет висеть веревка, прежде чем она выпрямится. Это забавно.
So that's pretty awesome. It wasn't that cheap. This is business class, but for business class, it also wasn't that expensive. It was like $100 and something. I figured starting off this Russia trip, we'll see Russia at its best, and we'll get more hardcore as time goes on. Hopefully not too hardcore, you know what I mean? And here we go. About 9 hours, be in Moscow. Hopefully I can get some sleep during that time. I normally don't sleep very well on transportation. Thank you. Good morning. Доброе утро. I think we're like an hour outside Moscow right about now. And even though I didn't.
Знаете, я пиздец как люблю ездить на поездах все-таки. В детстве мне хватало плацкартных вагонов. Но с тех пор, как я вытянулся в длину на 175 сантиметров, теперь я предпочитаю купейные вагоны.
Sleep super well. I gotta say, this is a pretty awesome experience right here. I mean, just look at all this. Got my own table, and then let me show you everything you get. So this would be like a bed. Got a blanket, got a pillow.
И мне очень не нравится экспириенс, типа, где ты идешь по вагону и, типа, вот так вот, блядь. Это, вот представили, что это нога, да? Вонючая нога, блядь, с грибком. Доброе утро. И самая хуевая ситуация. Чувак такой, мне понравилось, мне понравилось. Представь себе такое? Про кого смотришь видик? Про чувака, который приехал в Россию и сел на 15 дней в тюрягу. Ни за что.
Well, I get 2 pillows. I get 4 pillows if you're lucky, and you don't have anybody else in the compartment. And they give you like towels. They give you slippers. They told me what these were called last night, but I already forgot. Very good though. Oh, no man, this is about as luxurious as it's gonna get on this channel. Alright, let's see. Yeah, have a good one. Yeah, keep learning English, it's good. I'm in there, so you learn English by playing computer games online. I hope he doesn't get cut off in the rest of the world. I hope the internet stays open. Alright, we are now in Moscow. An American in Moscow, 2024. wild thing is, I actually do not have a hotel booked because I can't book anything online. So I'm just gonna have to show up to a hotel and lay down a stack of cash. Gotta do it the old-fashioned way. What was that building over there?
Ну, это, кстати, очень частая хуйня, блядь, что в метро, блядь, в России, блядь, в Москве кто-то играет какую-то хуйню. Они обычно неплохо играют, потому что тех, кто плохо играет, не пускают играть.
Spasibo. Alright, just got a coffee from Stars Coffee. Living in the alternate universe that is Russia. The heat cover for the cup doesn't seem to fit properly. So you may have heard in the media that after everything started in 2022, when McDonald's and Starbucks left the country in 2022, it's not like they stopped existing in Russia, because they work on a franchise system. So the Russian company that ran Starbucks and McDonald's in Russia, they just changed the name and kept it going. And it's like they never left. It's almost exactly the same. Just maybe the design quality's gone down a slight bit.
Метро красивое в Москве. Ну, это прикольный аттракцион, но опять же, когда она строилась и на какие деньги? То есть это кровавая хуйня. Она строилась тогда, когда ограбили Украину и устраивали ей голодомор. Миллионы украинцев умерли, блядь, из-за того, что вот эту хуйню решили построить.
Let's go meet Lenin. So, for those that didn't know, the body of Vladimir Lenin is embalmed and still on display over 100
Это краденые деньги.
years after he died. We just wait on this super long line to get in there and not taking pictures. Apparently I can go see the body. Извините, советские лидеры? Да, ага. Все лидеры?
Да, все лидеры, которые революции было во время войны. Вот Жуков у нас был.
Жуков, да.
Потом Стива, который у нас был президентом еще в 80 году. Это все знаменитые личности, все наши которые.
So these are all the Soviet leaders, military commanders. They're also buried here. I don't know if they're mobbed, but they're here. And you have some heavy hitters from early Soviet history. Sverdlov, the early leader of the Republic that eventually became the Soviet Union. Zvernisky, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Head of the secret police during Lenin's time. Yuri Andropov, the leader of the Soviet Union for 2 years in the 1980s before Gorbachev came to power. Kalinin, another early leader from Lenin's time. And I think you all know this guy. They used to actually have Stalin's body here, right next to Lenin's, but they kind of thought about it and then they demoted him. So Lenin's body is in this building right over here, I believe. You're gonna have to turn the camera off. That was wild. Wow. Now here we are, right on the Red Square. This still can't forget I'm an American in Moscow in 2024. This is a trippy experience. So when you go into the tomb where Lenin is being held, the body of Lenin, you're not allowed to stop and gawk at it. You have to keep going in a circle, and then you kind of take your time, look at it. But it's quite an experience. The lights dimmed. Lenin looks like he just died yesterday. Apparently this thing right over here is not normally in the Red Square. They're about to have some kind of like military parade or exhibition or musical, something related to the military. It's kind of just dividing the square in half. St. Basil's Cathedral, somewhere over there. So here we have probably the most famous building in all of Russia, St. Basil's Cathedral. But do you know the reason for why it was built? It's actually way more interesting than you think. It was built during the time of Ivan the Terrible, arguably the most terrible leader in Russia's history, and it was built to celebrate the defeat of the Tatars. Not only that, but he built 8 more churches.
Прикиньте, да? Вы строите такую охуенную, блядь, церковь по госзаказу, блядь, царя. И вам просто потом выкалывают глаза, чтобы вы не построили другую такую. Где-нибудь еще. Это типа благодарность по-русски. Охуенная церковь, мне понравилась. Надеюсь, ты не построишь больше никогда такую. Правда? Чтобы убедиться, что ты этого не сделаешь, действительно, мы выколем тебе глаза. А теперь иди с миром.
And connected to St. Basil's Cathedral, all as a giant screw you to the Tatars. But I have absolutely nothing against the Tatars. It's Russia's officially largest minority group. That's one of the 8 churches right there. Another middle finger to the Tatars. In this Russia? Okay. I have my card now. She said my Russian was good. There's nothing not true. Bye. Nice to hear it. This is an eternal flame dedicated to the unknown soldier. All the Soviet soldiers died in World War II. In Chinese log, and once again, I saw similar monuments in Belarus. You have the names of all the different cities that were involved in World War II that fought back against the Nazis. Minsk, Belarus, Stalingrad, Russia. Over here, you have Sevastopol, Crimea. Soviet leadership, they saw the battles for these cities as the major battles defending the Soviet Union, the Russian heartland. There were battles in Estonia as well, Latvia, Lithuania, and even though those became part of the Soviet Union, they're not listed here. Kiev. This monument takes on such a new tragic meaning in 2024. And then, of course, behind this wall is the Kremlin. The Kremlin is actually not just a single building. It's a fortification which includes multiple buildings, palaces, cathedrals. But ever since the fall of the Russian Tsar and the time of the Soviet Union, it has been the residence of the President of the Russian Republic. honestly, walking around here, seeing the Red Square, Kremlin, all this stuff, it's honestly very nicely designed. I want to be very clear that I'm not here to make propaganda piece for Russia, but from a tourist perspective, just calling it as it is. It's nice. It's much nicer than Tiananmen Square. Just as an example. And of course, to be fair, I would expect this to be nice. This is Russia at its best. St. Petersburg, Moscow, the heart of Russia, the big cities where all the influence and wealth is gathered. So let's go down and take the very famous Moscow metro somewhere a bit further out from the center. I was just standing on the platform here, and some old guy came up to me and he's like, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from America." And he just shakes my hand, he's like, "I'm Armenian." And then he left.
Типа, ну посмотри на это. Оно примерно такое же красивое, как красивый, блядь, советский бункер. Ничего красивого, честно говоря. Типа, это просто рельса, блядь. Это просто, блядь, подземный бункер, блядь. Куча бетона, блядь. Это уебищная старая хуйня. Типа, если тебе нравятся поезда, это прикольное место. Просто потому что поезда, ну, их не русские придумали. Да, то есть, как бы, это просто прикольная вещь. А все остальное, ну, все равно полное очко.
In Moscow neighborhood. It reminds me a lot of China. Just different companies, but the same style of buildings, same kind of common blocks. I say that affectionately. All over Moscow, you have these little underground passages. You know, Moscow's got these massive boulevards. It set the standard for all these like Soviet countries, cities, even China. Don't think of this. Don't think of this, considering the laws of Russia.
Когда, блядь, уебищная русская.
There is another mega Soviet monument dedicated to the workers, the laborers of the Soviet Union. You can see there's a man, a woman up there holding a grain, maintaining the Soviet economy. Moscow just feels like a very epic city. It feels different from St. Petersburg. Moscow reminds me of Beijing, a place where the emperor lives. All right, we have reached probably the most Soviet place in the entire world. It's like a theme park to the Soviet Union. This is a fountain with statues of women from all the different republics. They're all holding something from their native region. One is probably from Kazakhstan, one is from the Soviet Republic of Azerbaijan. China likes to do the same kind of thing. Every year for the spring festival on national TV, they'll have someone from Inner Mongolia, someone from Xinjiang, from Tibet, and they'll all come out with their native costume, something from their region. It's a very, what's the word? It's a Soviet Union or China kind of thing. This place is literally like a Soviet Disneyland. You have these little buildings, monuments dedicated to all the former Soviet republics. This one is Kyrgyzstan, a place most people know nothing about, including me. I know basics. Watched that one Vice documentary where they would go and kidnap women and they become their brides right after. Do they still do that? Apparently the Kyrgyzstan exhibition is under renovation. Azerbaijan. Here is Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan. Very nice. Вы из Казахстана?
Нет,
Нет?
Саша.
Правда?
Я российский казахстан. А вы из Казахстана, да?
Нет, я из Америки. Но я хочу поехать.
Казахстан, обязательно езжайте. Вам понравится.
Спасибо.
Хорошо, вы хорошо стоите.
Нет, спасибо. I got my Russian compliment. Here we have the former Soviet Republic of Egypt. That's a joke, but it's actually about Moldova. Apparently Moldova's been renting out their space. Here we have a new monument under construction. Can't read that. Who is this for? It is for Abkhazia. Abkhazia is what you can look up under the English. This used to be the pavilion of Lithuania, the Lithuanian Republic. This is the monument to brains. Get excited about brains. Very important. Staple food of the global diet. Monument to Belarus. Old Belarus, the most Soviet of all republics. According to Google Translate, that says 80 years since the liberation of Belarus from the Nazis. No, not gonna lie. This is way more fun than any of the monuments of Western Europe. Ah, very good. Oh wait, no, Tinder's blocked in Russia. Don't ask me how I know that. So that is a Soviet rocket, and up in the sky is a Soviet jet, and over here is a Russian nuclear. That's not very good. Here is literally a Soviet airplane. Can we go inside, let's say?
speaking
Yes, I can speak it. It's flight simulator.
That's flight
You can find inside the cockpit, yes.
Oh, really?
Like
Okay.
a real pilot.
Yeah, so this is-
All of us are real pilots.
Oh, nice. It's like
He's also
Soviet,
captain.
Soviet style airplane?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, wow.
You can see the cockpit, the picture of cockpit on the door.
Wow.
You can fly by yourself.
Interesting. I wanted to, so they're just,
This is the queue. You have to wait here.
Oh,
See,
okay.
about half an hour. About.
That's a long time.
Yes, it's a long time, but it's a holiday.
have you ever flown for like Aeroflot or
No,
commercial
I'm
airlines?
actually finished the flight school. There is no vacancies for me. There's so few airplanes
yeah.
because of sanctions.
Right, yeah. So there's a lot,
That's,
a lot of flights?
that's why I'm working here. I'm not flying.
I see.
I've got pilot license, but I don't fly.
Do you work
This situation.
do you work at other times?
With the Russian passport at this moment. It's working.
Hope things get better.
I think, yes, I hope so too.
Что это? Вертолет? Это Ми-8. Ми-8. Simulation. Симуляционе. А вы откуда? Америка. Очень приятно, очень приятно. No, I don't think I worked here. Just having a random conversation. So I read online that actually the building down there used to be for Ukraine. You want to check it out? Павильон украинский СССР. Извините, это раньше был Украина?
Да, Кинуть?
Yeah, you can go wonderful.
Yes, it was Ukraine, but till 1964.
1964,
Yes,
okay.
and in 1964 it was renamed in agriculture.
Okay.
All the pavilions were recalled after different different industries.
Oh, okay. When was the last time there was a Ukraine pavilion?
No, last time?
Yeah.
This pavilion was built in 1954.
Okay.
It was Ukraine for 10 years.
Okay.
And in 64 it was renamed in agriculture
Oh,
until
okay.
nowadays.
So since 1964, no
Yes,
Ukraine pavilion?
no, some years ago when
Телефон разряжается. Чай сделать. А у меня есть чай. Просто он такой светлый, что, блин, кажется, будто бы кружка пустая.
all the exhibition was renewed,
Yeah.
some republics wanted to have their pavilions once more, but Ukraine didn't want to.
Oh, okay. So Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, they're like, yes, we want a pavilion in Ukraine now.
For example, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, they didn't want
They all said no pavilion.
Yes.
Okay. All right, it's been a lot of fun at the Soviet Russian Disneyland extravaganza. I've never seen anything like this in my life. Definitely worth coming. Back there. This has to be like some farm, like Russian building that's behind me right there. All right, back to the train station. This time a different train station. Apparently Moscow has multiple train stations. And this is the end of our...
То были песни шамана, по-моему. Когда кто-то так завывает, кажется, скорее всего, это шаман.
Short little stay in Moscow. In our short little stay in the capital of all Russianness.
Бля, вот это кринж. Это, блядь, истинный кринж. Бля, я не знаю, в Украине такого нет. Типа ты заходишь на вокзал и проходишь, блядь, ту хуйню, которую ты обычно в аэропорту, блядь, проходишь. Тупо сумки, блядь, ставишь, блядь, на металлодетекторы вот эти вот, которые, блядь, сканируют этими рентгеновскими лучами, блядь, твою, блядь, сумку, блядь. И проходишь через эти, блядь, рамки, блядь, металлодетекторов, блядь. Это такое очко, честно говоря. Это говорит очень много о том, насколько это конченое место. Типа, я не удивлюсь, если скоро, блядь, будут, нахуй, заставлять россиян просто срать, блядь, нахуй, в тазик, блядь. И типа смотреть. А в очке вы там ничего не принесли? Нет? Может, вы пронесли заточку на наш вокзал? Может, вы кого-то решили тут зарезать? Типа, посрать в туалете, блядь, достать нож и кого-то убить? Ну-ка, насрите в тазик. Покажите, что у вас в жопе.
It's pretty modern skateboard. It's very confusing. Okay, put it in English letters. So far, I can't lie. St. Petersburg, Moscow, I've had an amazing time in both. Not a single negative experience. At the same time, I know how frustrating of a sentence that must be to hear. But these two cities are the best of Russia. Again, it's where all the wealth is concentrated. If you want to really know Russia, what I've been told, you gotta get out into the hinterland. That's exactly what we're about to do. I'm on a trip from Ireland, the Atlantic Ocean, all the way to China and the Pacific Ocean. We got a lot of ground covered. Gotta keep heading east. And so with that said, I have another train to catch. All right ahead of me. See you next time.
Бля, ебаный заусенец. Чему начался прожив в России год? А, слушай, чувак. То, чему ты научился, мне кажется, бесполезная вещь. Барат был ложью, это Казахстан. Бля, прикиньте, насколько надо быть конченным долбоебом, чтобы отсидеть в русской тюрьме, блядь, ни за что. И потом такой, я через 4 месяца все равно вернусь в Россию, блядь. Ну ебанат, по-честному. Я встретил семью нацистов, сбежавших в Аргентину. Блядь. Найс. Вот это название, чувак. Если это Геббельсы, ну, сообщи о них. Ну давай. Настоящая причина, по которой я ненавижу Кению.
Нyaji Bazoo. Nyaji Bazoo. I'm back in Nairobi, and I'm in Westlands. It's a fun neighborhood full of restaurants and clubs. Unfortunately, though, today is the very last day on my visa, so I'm flying out of here tonight. I've been doing some reflections about my time here. I think I had a pretty good time here in Kenya. But there are also some things I thought about that I don't like. You even say some things that I hate. We're gonna take a quick walk around Westlands. I'm gonna list off the 5 things I hate about Kenya. Hey, Kenyans, calm down. I see you getting angry already. Machines, come on, meet me. Wait. Here's a genie. Alright, the first thing that I hate. You know what I hate, Kenya? I hate that you lied to all of us. You made me think that this is a country just full of super aggressive, rude people. People that are gonna be assholes. You made me think that there are gonna be thieves everywhere. I was gonna get robbed at gunpoint just walking down the street. And you know what? I mean, these people probably exist. But I've been going around this country for almost 2 months, and I haven't met any of them. I mean, maybe besides the police, but I'll get into that later. Now, I've been all over this country, even to Garissa, and I just kept running into friendly people. A lot of people here, they call Nairobi night robbery, and they can seem incredibly dangerous. But my impression now is that actually you just need some basic street smarts. The same thing that we need in New York City, for example. Don't be an idiot. Don't do something stupid like, say, leave your bag on a bus. And if you can avoid stuff like that, I don't think you're gonna have any problems. Now, I'm not saying that Nairobi is as safe as, like, Tokyo or Geneva or something like that. But it's also not Civil War Syria. Do you think that Kenya is dangerous?
Not really.
Not really.
Not really.
Why not?
Because we've been living here We've been here, we're on here, we've been living here for more than 40 years. We have challenges, like most Kenyans.
Yeah. Many foreigners outside of Kenya, they take it dangerous too. So that's why I wanted to ask the question.
Not at all.
Not at all.
For foreigners, Kenya is the most safest place to live. Maybe for us, it can be dangerous for us as Kenyans, but for foreigners, no. Yeah.
There you go. Karibu, wazungu. So yeah, it's a serious thing because I know foreigners personally who haven't come here because they think it's dangerous. So you gotta work on this, Kenya. You gotta change your image. You gotta let everybody know what's really going on here. You gotta let them know you have a country here of nice people. Which brings me to my next point. The second thing that I hate about Kenya, I hate how easy it is to make friends here. I hate it because I never have any time to do anything else because I'm always talking to people, I'm always being invited to things. It's kind of amazing. Honestly, Kenya might be the least pretentious country I've ever been to. Well, of course, Tanzania and Uganda are right there with you. But only here have I seen that I can hang out with somebody in the upper class, lower class, middle class, whatever, it doesn't matter. They'll still
Ты о чем? Удали коммент про Москву, слышь? Блять. Китай построил подземный Лондон.
Hello. Hello there. I decided to bail on my trip to China. Decided to jump across the world. Jump over London, England. With the fresh green fields, the Victorian homes over there.
У меня слишком много вкладок открыто.
Hello. Hello there. I decided to bail on my trip to China. Decided to jump across the world. Jump over London, England. With the fresh green fields, the Victorian homes over there. It's wonderful. No, I'm not in England. I'm still in China. China has been so kind to create different countries of the world for you to go and visit. So you never have to leave the country. So I'm in a place called Jamestown, a housing complex that was built in 2010. Bench, model, London. As you can see, it went all out. I mean, I'm not sure if you see it, many hot dogs, but sitting over here next to George Gordon was an actual American that stayed here for about 3 years of the pandemic in China. It was great. My friend Luis. Nice to meet you. Well, actually, nice to see you again. Yeah, there we go. So Luis is going to give me a little report on here. Also, yeah, he's basically Chinese before. I wouldn't report, but what used to be famous about places like this is that they're basically ghost towns. They're built up. They're going to have like 5% occupancy rates. See almost nobody. But you must not move into these. Wow. Is that Winston Churchill? The one and only. Wow.你们有在英国的感觉吗？你有在英国的感觉吗？完全没有，完全没有。啊，说还可以，还可以。
你手往前压一点，看着手腕，对这个包提高一点点。我看啊，这边我take away pictures here and also have to take their new products like shirts and clothes. A lot of talk about pictures as well. The people there obviously not taking away because they're taking away for their clothing line. Perfect wedding photo spot and also product placement. Got anything to promote in this video? Oh no, don't have to make it. You know, I've been to some noisy places. China, Nigeria, the New York subway. Sometimes you need a way to get away from it all and block out the noise. Sometimes you need a way to feel like you're in Switzerland.
Удаляй всю свою хуету, в которую ты играешь, и я даю тебе пока ты сдаешь экзамены и живешь как хочешь. То в принципе норма день. Берешь при ней, удаляешь ярлыки с рабочего стола. А она тебе говорит, ты что, думаешь, я дура? Из корзины удаляй.
And for that, I can heavily recommend the Space One headphones by Anchor. Space One are noise-canceling environment that you're in. For a perfect restaurant and you machines going blackout with phone calls and chatter all around you, you need to get your focus back. You can put on Space One headphones. Space One, ridiculously good. Research. Functioning, man. Now, let's get back to China's version of Europe. Functioning, man. They're very serious about this photos right there. Very special. So getting married in London. They made a long trip all the way over here. Yeah. Okay, so that Jake Oh. Oh, OK， 你是摄影师吗？没事 ，OK， 谢谢。我们去教堂。你好，你是牧师吗？好，不是，宗教活动，进行宗教。哦，师傅。他们现在在祈祷吗？里面有什么活动啊？哦，因为 the sign saying that there's religious activities going on at the moment, but according to our friend over here. Over here, we got James Bond. Clearly the opposite of the Pierce Brosnan version. You can tell the age of this place just by that. It's been around for over a decade. So we found a rental agent. Show us a home. 4,500 USD. For 4,500 USD per month. This can be your home. The entire suburban house. So, 5个房间，4个小间，5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. Oh, and you got a fireplace. The ultimate luxury in China. The ultimate way. So remember that you're in London, just chilling here, in your British living room. Look out. It's your British garden. Say hello to all your British neighbors. All from just a few miles outside Shanghai. Oh, look at this. Oh man, you get your own private sauna.
What's the telling me is that in this area here, like before, they didn't have any restrictions on how big you could build in China, so you can build houses like this. So new buildings and new communities, they're not allowed to build this big anymore.
Oh,
so back in 2004, they built this. So in fact, Jamestown was not built until like 30 or 20 years old.
Wow. So these houses are relatively fast. You're not allowed to have houses this big anymore. I mean, think about it. I forget the packiness of the whole area. This is an amazing deal. I mean, how many places in America you can find a house with 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms? Your mortgage payments work out to like $6,000 a month, and this is about 30-minute drive from the heart of Shanghai. Without traffic. Without traffic. You're trying to sell this house, bro.
Alright, man, these really bring back memories, man. For all those foreigners right here, back in 2021, these are the spots. In order for you to do actually any public works, you had to go to one of these days. And yeah,
So this is basically a COVID testing center. If you stayed in China for the past 3 years, you have to get a test like what, every 72 hours?
every 6 hours, if you want to go on the subway or want to go to a restaurant.
How would this work?
There'll be someone inside there, and then you have to scan the barcode that you open with your alley, and then they'll give you the test, and after you do the code test, and they'll tell you, like, okay, they'll scan over and they'll tell you, within 24 hours, you'll get something code. If you're okay, if you're not okay with the red code.
And 3 days later, you have to come back and do the same thing all over again?
Not every 3 days, every 2 days, because you have to make sure that your code is better. Every 72 hours. If you wait 3 days, your code will probably be invalid.
Yeah,
So it's better if you do it earlier.
That's crazy. Just imagine, every couple of days, walking up to here, sticking your head in. Nah, man, all the fun I was missing. My friend has been kind enough to bring his Tesla. Cheapest Tesla you can buy, $35,000 here in China. You can produce right here. Here's a playlist from QQ, the biggest music app in China. And one of the musical categories that you choose is Feijiu, Nianqing Ren, Zhengzai Tingxima. What are black people currently listening to?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Phil.
I was kind of wondering. So, Luis, as one of the Lawais that stayed here during the entire 3 years of the pandemic, including the, what was it, 3 months?
Yeah,
During the lockdown last year? How'd you deal with that? How was that?
Just try to stay positive, I guess. I mean, not much else you can do. Try to make as many friends as I can with people that live in my community. And try
So you were able to still talk to people outside of your apartment?
At one point, yes, but for the first month, we're not allowed to get out of our house. And also, we wanted to do trash. We had to get the security guards to come to our house to pick up trash. But then the situation got a little better because our neighborhood in particular, there wasn't that many people that were infected, so it was all free. So we were able to walk around the neighborhood. And those are probably the highlights of our day every day.
How did it start? You were just at home one day and they said, like, it's gonna take like 3 days and it's over?
For me, actually, I got lucky because I'm in the pushing western part of Shanghai, so they gave us 3 days notice. But for people that are in Pudong, they didn't even give 1 day's notice, they only a couple hours. So during that time, people were rushing to the supermarket to buy as much as they could. But for us,
Понятно. Видимо, у нее уже был опыт ультиматумов только до твоего бати. И он ее так уже наебывал. И она его раскусила.
we had a few days to start our 3-day lockdown. So we were able to buy some stuff, but towards the second or third day before the lockdown, most of the supermarkets were empty. There was absolutely no food. So whatever you can find is whatever you can get.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ничего, чувак. Есть куча браузерных игр.
But yeah, I mean,
И куча игр, которые скачиваются за 3 секунды.
I said, survived it, and now things are going in the right direction.
Yeah. You still see a lot more people wearing face masks now.
Oh,
That never used to be a thing in China.
Oh, yeah,
Pre-pandemic.
that's true.
But, yeah.
There's definitely a lot less people on the streets. There was a lot more people back in 2019. I think definitely there is. It's slowing down. Yeah, it's slowing down. That's what I would say. It's slowing down. Yeah, it's slowing down.
Alright, so as you may have heard, these little fake European towns are all over China. And the most famous of all of them, the giant fake Eiffel Tower, is in a place called Hangzhou. To get there, we have to go ride Gaotie. High speed rail for the first time. Let's go do it. This is Shanghai Hongqiaojiang, the largest high-speed rail station, not just in Shanghai, but the whole country. There's so many people here, it's hard to even imagine. We got trains leaving from here to go literally all over the country. Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, there's a train that goes into Hong Kong. You can take a train to Shenzhen. Okay, so I'm trying to get to Hangzhou. My check-in area is at station number 16. Supposedly, I can get in there with just a passport. I'll find out. Hi, ni hao. Okay. Zhizhia. There's a whole special process for foreigners running public transportation in China. You have to go out like a special gate. They made the process a little bit easier, I will say that. It used to be back in the day. Every time I went to ride with these high-speed rail lines, I did a lot. I used to go down to Hong Kong all the time. I had to go to the ticket counter and buy a ticket. I went on this huge-ass line. Meanwhile, Chinese people got just use the self-ticketing machines, save a ton of time. It was kind of easy.麻烦你。好像我是13D。
昨天晚上，然后不是。
どこ吧？どこ？对，加油。All right, just 40 minutes later, and we're already there. High-speed rail system in China is definitely one of my favorite parts of the country. I mean, you know, just paid about $13 for a first-class seat. There are always tons of people taking the train from Shanghai to Hangzhou. I took this right in the middle of the afternoon at like 3 p.m. Still packed train. It's an easy getaway. It's only about 40 minutes to an hour. Maybe from Shanghai to here. Nice little trip. Take your family, take your girlfriend. Well, my only criticisms of the high-speed rail system here in China is all the stations look basically the same. It's like they were all mass-produced at the same time around a decade ago. And yeah, enjoy the stations. Use the touch personality. Welcome to Hangzhou, what many Chinese would consider to be the most beautiful city in China. I actually agree with that. It's one of my favorite cities in the country. It's full of beautiful little canals. There's a huge lake that you can walk around. And in general, just a very nicely maintained city. Now, Hangzhou used to be the capital of the Song dynasty, all the way up until the Mongols came and conquered China and messed all that up. It's a common story throughout China. The Mongols coming in and messing everything up. But anyway, over here is the West Lake. So this bridge right here is known as Duanqiu, the broken bridge. This man staring at me. Hi, ni hao, ni hao, ni hao. Oh, you find what the job? Hi, ni hao, ni hao, ni hao. Okay, ni hao, ni hao. 你猜一下，我是西方人，我是美国人，你喜欢美国吗？
美国和口齿讲。
OK， 我喜欢中国。OK， 大概是这个。I was about to say, this is Guangzhou, Broken Bridge, a very famous scenic spot here in Hangzhou, which is why I swore by tourists at the moment. But this is also the most romantic place you can come in all of Hangzhou. It involves a story of a woman. It's a bit of a weird story, to be honest. A woman with a snake in a lake, and a man was walking along the bridge, and he saw the snake, and then she popped out, and they fell in love. Something like that. It's very confusing. But you know, what that means is, if you've got a Chinese girlfriend or a Chinese boyfriend, this is the spot to take them to. You come to Hangzhou, you bring them to the Broken Bridge, and you relive the weird love story that took place here. They'll love it. TikTok has corrupted the world so much that even grannies are out here singing on Douyin. Now, Hangzhou is also a financial city. It's a place where Alibaba was founded. You know what that means? That means there's lots of interesting property speculation here as well, including a giant fake Eiffel Tower. You may have heard of this. I've always wanted to go and see this. We're going to do it today. It's at a place called Tianducheng, and it's a little bit outside of Hangzhou. It's like in the suburbs. So, okay, gonna take a few steps that way. Just wait until you see what pops out. Ta-da! We've made it to Paris. This tower is perhaps the greatest symbol of China's overdevelopment, or supposed overdevelopment. The ghost cities that line the country. Because here, surrounding it, there's supposed to be a park. It's supposed to be a desirable area that people want to move to. Look, you even have a little marker for a metro station that was meant to be here. You want oh. This Eiffel Tower, you can only look at and admire. But is that really the case? Let's find out. Okay, not the only one. Doesn't look like there's any way up. Must want to do like parkour or something. This is not one of those Daredevil channels where we climb up skyscrapers for your amusement. Okay, kind of channel. Oh, shit.
这个没水，这个水枪。
好了，谢谢。Okay, that was fun. What other part of Paris do they have? Dodging traffic here. It really is wild. From a distance, that looks just like Champs-Elysees in Paris. You know, like same architecture. But as you start to walk closer, all the little storefronts at the bottom, they're like Chinese restaurants. I gotta say, there's a lot more people living here than I expected. Keep turning around a little bit. If you're a foreigner in China, somebody just keeps staring at you and they won't stop. Just stare back at them and then wave. You'll make some new friends that way. Guaranteed. I love this. So in China, it's very common to just dry your laundry out your own window, you know, hang on the railing outside. I've never seen that on Champs-Elysees. I love the contrast. Not quite a ghost city, but no problem. No problem there. 请问我可以问一下吗？你们就在这里吗？
是的。
OK，什么时候开始就在这里的？
我们
今年。
17年了。
变化很大吗？
变化大。
现在有好多不一样的商店吗？
对。
Тяжко без шахмат. А что, тебе шахматы, что ли, нельзя играть?
这个地方。
这现在人都满了，原来很少的人。
OK，
原来来过是吧？
对，这是我第一次来过。
第一次。
对对。
前几年这边都没有。
我在6年左右，以前这人很少，现在人就多了。
啊 ，OK，
人就提高了。
OK，谢谢，再见。谢谢，没有。我got to learn a couple of Chinese. I appreciate it. The Quality Life Experience Center. I have no idea what you mean by that. 哦，哎，大妈，我可以再问一下，我是想问一下，这是什么样的地方？什么样的商店？
什么样的商店？
对。
看一下。
啊，买衣服的吗？哦，新体，哦，西卡吗？啊，没有，谢谢。好 ，OK， 我可以卖给你朋友。
给你朋友在哪里啊？
啊，他不存在。
好，我可以带你参观一下我们的店里。
好，我退一下。然后这是够。
哦。在这里练瑜伽、形体课，还有做很多活动。
OK，做活动的地方啊。
做活动的地方。你是哪个国家的？
我是美国人。
你美国人。对，很帅。可以坐下来喝咖啡茶。
好，谢谢。在这。谢谢。
哎呀，谢谢啊，谢谢。来吧，
好，谢谢。我们队员是呀，我们队员。
这个好，谢谢。
好，谢谢。可以的。今晚啊。
很帅。很帅。
这种东西就学所以才好了。
不错，
你中文真好哎。
不是，
我们中国人他其实还是蛮热情。
啊，对。
不要说有什么，其实我们老百姓都是很热情。
OK，
不会说有什么。
你们都是。
就像我们中国人跟美国一样的，一样的，你们那边也热情，差不多。
我们美国人也很有热情，热闹的，热情的。如果你们来美国，我们会请你一个啤酒。
哦，请你
一个啤酒，对，就是美国法式。啊，对，就是啥，这边是啤酒。
看到了没有？看到了。监督公园蓝色的标牌有个箭头的，看到吗？还有绿色的，就是过去一点点，往里面往这边走。啊，知道了。有条小路，沿着小路边走就可以了。
知道了。好，谢谢告诉我。
好的，大家不害怕啊。
That's cute. I don't know if that was a sales pitch, but they're very nice. As you can see, there's absolutely no one better in the world at giving compliments than Chinese people. These are the kind of good things you don't always hear about. And yes, I know I'm not as handsome as they were saying. I'm more handsome. So this is what the inside of one of these buildings looks like. Okay, so inside it's literally just like any other Chinese part of the building. Got shoes outside. Got wishes of wealth and happiness. This seems like an empty apartment that everyone's just using as like a storage area. So this is what one of the apartments would look like. This would be the kitchen. Very small apartments actually. 你可以在这里卖东西吗？啊，有好多游客回来的吗？哇，有时候有法国人吗？偶尔有啊。啊，不错。你在看抖音吗？啊，看什么视频？哇，要跳舞的。OK，我跳舞不好。
你说你说的中文挺好。
啊，我说的还可以。
在这里教学，老师是吧？
啊，不是老师，我有一个很复杂的工作。30岁。
老婆有了啊？
老朋友。
媳妇儿老婆？
没有老婆。
没有啊？
啊，对，你有老公吗？啊 ，OK，那我觉得他好学习。I'm sorry, wife. Too late. Bye. 你好，这里是收费的吗？好 ，OK， 多少钱呢？13块。40。哦，有点贵，为什么那么贵？啊，谢谢啊，再见。You can tell by the faded coloring how old this map is. This was what was imagined back in 2007. Got lots of happy Hangzhou families coming here, running around, horse and buggy every day, get to work. In the end, it's actually not people from Hangzhou that are moving here, I think. It's more people from other provinces. And I'm sure it's market forces that finally made this area available. Oh, they really went for a full recreation with these statues. And there we have it. This is what the $7.50 was for. For a view like this. A view of the Paris of China. In the early 2000s, China's economy was booming. For the first time, you started to have a Chinese middle class. But then something happened. The great financial crash happened in 2008 in America and caused, obviously, the Great Recession around the world. China did not want the growth to stop. So what they did, they pumped money into the property sector. Loans were dirt cheap to come by, so new apartment blocks sprung up all over the country. It was a way to create employment, and it was assumed that these houses would quickly be bought up. But something was starting to happen just at the same time. As Chinese people began to get more and more money, they became more interested in traveling around the world. They wanted to see the real Paris, not a fake one. Also, projects like these were built way too far from city centers. You know, people didn't want to commute that far. They could just buy an apartment close to where their office was. And then even worse, you began to have property speculation. Housing prices were going up every year in China, so everybody wanted to buy a second or third house as a way to make money. As a result, places like this sat empty for many years. But supposedly, things are starting to change. America, make war. I love it. It's great. I'm found it. 他叫什么名字？
叫奶茶。
奶茶。Okay. It's interesting seeing the fake European towns of China. There's more to them than originally meets the eye. And I think, on that note, this is a good place to end the vlog. I'll see you on the next stop. Not sure where I'm going just yet. Probably somewhere in the countryside. So, 下次见. Bye bye.
Нет, блядь, меня запретили. Шахматы это святое. Как я без шахмат-то буду? Тебе не похуй, нет? На запреты. Берешь просто открываешь инкогнито режим, блядь, нахуй, играешь в шахматы.
Okay, let's just first address the elephant in the room. I know it doesn't look like a conventional typewriter, and trust me, there's a very good reason for this, and you'll understand what I mean in a couple of minutes, but I can assure you that this is an actual working typewriter that you can 3D print. I'm going to show you how it works, and we're also going to test it out, but it would be weird to do that without any context, so let's start at the very beginning. It was a rainy November night, and I was watching a feature documentary about Karami's assassination, and suddenly I found myself looking at this one video in my sidebar recommendations, and I still don't know what happened. Maybe it was my Cheeto dust-encrusted fingers that slipped, we'll never know, but I clicked on the video, and that led me down a rabbit hole of typewriter-related content on YouTube. I was so fascinated by the idea of having a mechanical thing that can write words on paper that I started thinking about the possibility of making a 3D printable version, which led to some more research and talking to friends who own a typewriter, and this is essentially what the basic mechanism boils down to. There is a type bar which has a mirror image of the letter you want to type on one end, and the other end is mechanically linked to a key. Once you press the key, the type bar swings towards the paper paper and leaves an imprint of the letter you wanted to type. Oh, by the way, in a real typewriter, there would be an ink ribbon like this one between the type bar and the paper. And let's just talk about ink for a second, because this thing is a nightmare to deal with. Even if you're really careful while working with it, your hands are eventually going to end up looking like you just committed a violent hate crime against Squidward. But thankfully, we're not going to be using ink ribbons for our typewriter. Instead, we're going to use carbon paper because it's cheap, easy to handle, and available everywhere if you live in the 1980s. Okay, I can't be the only one who, as a child, thought that this was what they meant by carbon footprint, right? Right? The next thing we need to design is a mechanism that will move the paper by one space with every key press, and in real typewriters, this functionality is achieved by using a spring-powered mechanism called an escapement. Escapements are really complicated and, more importantly, really flimsy, so I thought I'd make my own more robust version of the same thing, and this is what it looks like. So instead of being spring-powered, this is going to be powered by your fingers. Every time you press a key, this part will move up, and the rack will move forward by one space, but when you lift your finger, the rack doesn't move back to its original position, because that would be insane. For those who are interested, this is just a rack and pinion mechanism coupled with a ratchet. Okay, the two main mechanisms are done. We will add a holder for the carbon paper later so that we can see what we're actually typing, but at this point, we can just start working on the prototype for the typewriter's body, and here's what it looks like. This semicircle is where all of the type bars will rest, and I've linked the type bars with the escapement through these beams. Sorry, I think that's a typo. I meant these beams. When you press a key, this beam contraption thingy will raise the pusher attached to the escapement, moving the paper carriage by one space. At least that's what was supposed to happen. So some of you might remember that I posted this exact prototype on my channel in November, and then just like an involuntary moan during a job interview, I conveniently pretended like it never happened. Well, here's why. Throughout the history of this channel, I've tried to make 3D printable versions of real things, and more often than not, they work out just fine because the material properties of 3D printing filament never really get tested to their limit. But in case of typewriters, we need certain parts to be very rigid. Take this contraption for example. If you look closely, the beams are all H-shaped, which is supposed to be the least bendy cross-section for a load-bearing beam. And also I've added these ribs for extra support, but even after all that, they're bendier than a Japanese salaryman at a business meeting. So as long as you press a key around the center of the keyboard, it's going to work fine. But as soon as you move towards the edges of the keyboard, the beams flex a lot more, and because of that, this pusher doesn't move up properly and the escapement stops working. But that's not all, because God forbid if my whole project doesn't implode on itself a week before my upload deadline. Remember how in real typewriters the escapement is spring-powered and not human-powered like my mechanism? Well, it turns out there's a reason for that. Leaving a legible imprint on paper takes a considerable amount of force, and on top of that, if we add the force required to make our escapement work, well, that's just too much effort for one single key press. And since you guys know that I'm built less like Dwayne The Rock Johnson and more like Dwayne The Rock Johnson, this is a huge issue for me. At this point, I had no key press. And since you guys know that I'm built less like Dwayne The Rock Johnson and more like Dwayne The Rock Johnson, this is a huge issue for me. At this point, I had no choice but to abandon this project, and I was really sad about it. Oh, fuck you, Bob, you overachieving claymation asshole. But then I got my shit together, drank some expired Yakult, dry heaved in the toilet for 3 hours, then banged out another low-effort Beyblade video in about 2 weeks, which became my most watched video ever. I hate my life. Then for the next 2 months, I kind of forgot about this project until one day when I was watching a Technology Connections video about old phones, something just clicked. And we're going to talk about that, and I'm also going to tell you about how this shitty Instagram game saved this entire project. No, unfortunately, I'm not kidding. But before we do that, I want to thank my sponsor for this video, PCBWay. If you guys want to build something, whether it's a robotics project or a mechanical one like this one, or even if it's something more industrial like CNC or 3D printing, whatever you could possibly need, these guys can help. They've helped me with getting with a quick turnaround at the link rotary phones. That was my inspiration for the new design, and let me explain why. So in rotary phones, the main action, which is dialing a number, happens at a fixed place, which is where your finger stops when you input a number. So if I apply the same idea to a typewriter, we can eliminate a lot of moving parts and completely get rid of the issues caused by the filament being too bendy. Here's what I have in mind. So this free spinning rotor would hold 26 hot swappable keys, and you can only press a key when it's positioned directly above a slot in the base plate. Once you press a key, the paper carriage will move under the type slug, get an imprint of the letter associated with the key, and then move back to its original spot once you release the key. Now the reason we're doing this is because ideally you want to be able to see what you're typing. In traditional typewriters, it's the ribbon that moves, but since in our case the type slugs directly cover the paper, we need to move the paper carriage instead. Now the question remains, how do we move the paper carriage? No, not like that. Well, my first idea was to use a wedge like this one with some rubber bands, and while in a frictionless world it would work fine, but in reality this mechanism jams way too much, and every key press feels like biting into a raw potato, which if you've never done that leaves you with a strong sense of shame and is not a great tactile feeling overall. So instead we're going to use a rack and pinion mechanism. Here's how it works. You press a key which moves this rack, which rotates the pinion, which moves this rack, and attached to this rack is the paper carriage. Add a rubber band to the setup, and we're done. It works great. Now after making a few adjustments and attaching the rotor to it, here's what it looks like. As you can see, there's a 1-to-1 displacement ratio between the key and the paper carriage, which might seem great on paper, but unfortunately there's a new problem that we need to fix. So for some reason, if the paper carriage and the type slug stop moving at the exact same moment, the whole thing ends up looking like Papa Smurf's undies during the 2020 toilet paper crisis, which is not ideal. To fix this, we need to make it so that the paper carriage comes to a stop a few millimeters before the type slug, and then starts moving again after the type slug has been lifted. We kind of need a mechanical delay switch, and honestly, it took me a good day or two to figure this out, but the solution was surprisingly simple. We need to just break the paper carriage down into 2 parts. The top part, which would have a paper on it, is slightly longer than the bottom part and is attached to it with a rubber band. So when we press a key, the top and bottom parts move together until the top part stops, but then the bottom part keeps moving for an extra few millimeters until the type slug reaches the paper and leaves a relatively smear-free imprint, which makes me very happy, as you can probably tell by my facial expressions. Now that that part is done, we can start working on the escapement mechanism to move the paper carriage by one space with every key press. And at first I really wanted to recycle my old mechanism because frankly I put a lot of time into it, but then again I also don't want to run into the same issues as last time, so I think I'm gonna have to make an actual spring-powered escapement this time. Okay, I've researched a ton about escapements from typewriters to Swiss watches, and everything that I've found so far seems too complicated with too many parts, and I feel like this is not going to work for us. Because my goal with this typewriter was to make it simple enough that you could easily assemble it at home without your living room feeling like a Bangladeshi sweatshop. At this point, I had already invested more than a couple of months into this project, and it really seemed like I was being irrational by trying to fix it again and again. I was also running out of money, and it seemed like my only real option was to abandon any sense of shame and make another Beyblade video. But then one evening while I was scrolling through Instagram, consuming my daily dose of breastfeeding videos and racism, I got an ad for this really crappy game where you need to navigate through disc-shaped levels. I mean, I don't need to explain this, you've probably seen this garbage a million times, but this gave me an idea for a new kind of escapement. Okay, so here's my new design. Every time you type a letter, the cylinder will rotate and the paper carriage will move left by one space. The paper carriage is connected by a rubber band to the left side of the assembly, and this protruding bit latches onto the cylinder. The cylinder has 2 grooves on each level, and as soon as you turn it by 90 degrees, this knob slides through the groove and stops at the next level. Now while I know that this thing looks like something Megatron would have used in college to explore his sexuality, I think it's actually pretty clever because it makes the spacing independent of any fixed gear ratios. So you can modify the spacing and character count by just changing the size and number of levels. But now you might be thinking, how are we going to turn the cylinder by exactly 90 degrees with every key press? Well, here's how. So these propeller looking things connect to the ends of the cylinder, and as the carriage assembly moves back and forth, these prongs interact with these stationary horns on either side of the typewriter, turning the cylinder in only one direction, thus moving the paper carriage forward with each key press. Oh, I almost forgot, I'm giving away another Bamboo Lab A1 Mini with this video. Holy mother of God, these things used to be like $180 like a couple of weeks ago. What the actual fuck? Well, maybe I should have checked before promising a giveaway, but in any case, I'll just pick a random subscriber from the comment section a month from the release date of this video. Anyway, we're not quite done yet because we've got another problem to solve, and it's supposed to be the easiest one of them all. We just need to add a little spring-loaded holder for the carbon paper, and I did that.
Что говорит в молоток?
And it turns out you can only get maybe 3 or 4 letters out of a single spot of carbon paper. After that, it just runs out of ink. Great, now we need to somehow figure out a way to move the carbon paper along with the paper carriage so that there's a fresh spot for every subsequent key press, but the paper carriage is moving back and forth. So how the fuck am I supposed to link it to the stationary carbon paper holder? Well, here's what I did. I made this arm that allows the carriage to move freely, but it also couples the strip of carbon paper with the paper carriage, so it moves forward after every key press, thus making sure that there's an unused bit of carbon paper available for the next key press. Okay, so we're done with everything. Now we just need to make it look less like something that would get you involuntarily fisted at an airport, and then we can print the final thing. Here's what it looks like. I think it came out pretty good. Now it's time to test it out. Okay, it works, but in all honesty, this is just a proof of concept, so to speak, and there are still a lot of things that can be added to make it better, and because of that, this time I'm also including the step files with the 3D print files and instructions for this project, so that you can add new fonts and symbols, play around with spacing, add more keys, etc., and everything is available on both my Gumroad and my Patreon. Links in the description. Also, if you want to make something simpler like any of my past projects, you can find those on my Gumroad as well, and a special thanks to my Patreon members for their continued support. It genuinely means a lot to me. I promise
Видел. Я отправил их пеньков через эту, через ворота, блядь, Андерлорда. Мне горячую воду налить. Ноги, они чешутся. У меня кончились бабки. Наличные. А в магазине карты не принимают. Хочу нормальной еды. Я так заебался есть хуевую еду, честно говоря.
Okay, everyone, yes, hi, Tata. Yellow, blue, Tata. Yellow, blue, Tata. All right, good morning. Okay, that's it. We just arrived in another one of Russia's biggest cities that you may have never heard of. It's called Kazan. There's an advertisement. There's McDonald's replacement. Вкусная точка. Kazan is the home of Russia's officially largest minority group, the Tatars. A group of people read about books, but never met in person. So I'm pretty excited. I'm not gonna lie, I did just wake up. I'm still waking up. But I'm excited. The excitement is waking me up. Kazan, an American in Russia, 2024. Let's do this. Should probably go and try and find a hotel first. Those don't look like hotels. Alright, I found this place over here. About 35 euros a night. Can't check in yet, but left my luggage. Let's go see what they have in Kazan. Behold, the wondrous city of Kazan. Interesting little setup they got going here on the river. Kind of looks like they have some garden hoses to shoot water up in there. I like it though. Notice that people wait very carefully at the crosswalk too. They don't really jaywalk. It's maybe the only place I've seen this outside of Japan. And I'm kind of wondering why. Look, it's a pyramid. The Great Pyramid of Kazan. That's kind of cool. And up there is a mosque. A little bit different than the mosque you might see in Western Europe. I'll explain. Sprinkler system just turned on. Can't let the GoPro get wet. Water is the enemy of any GoPro. Little trip. Little trip to the mosque. Who's this guy here? That thing turning on turnstile. Спасибо. Вы татар? Татар, здравствуйте. Как сказать? Исамсис? Окей, спасибо. Исамсис. Спасибо. We are in the Cool Sharif Mosque, the Grand Mosque of Kazan. This is supposed to be Mecca thing. And then here you have the Bible, you have the Torah, you have another Bible, and the Quran. For those that don't know, in Islam, they believe that Jesus, Moses, they were prophets also. Or prophets in Islam. So like Islam is a continuation of Judaism and Christianity. Kind of looks like a Muslim version of Lenin right there. Lenin actually went to college in Kazan. And then he got expelled for bad revolutionary behavior. This is a little map of pilgrimage routes that Tatars would have to take to get to Mecca. So you can see one route was they would go. For the east, in Kazakhstan, then Samarkand, Uzbekistan. Probably link up with Muslims from China, going on the same route. I love the whole interconnectedness of Eurasia. That stuff fascinates me. A female Muslim conqueress, obviously thanks to the Communist Revolution. So, with the Tatars, they're majority Muslim, and their culture is a little bit different from Islam in the Middle East or even in Chechnya, which is another part of Russia. Those places are much more conservative. Interestingly, it wasn't Arab traders or an Arab empire or anybody from the Middle East that brought Islam to the Tatars. It was actually the Mongols. That's right. The Mongols, during the time of Genghis Khan, under the command of Subutai, one of the greatest generals in the history of the Mongols. They came over, ran roughshod over this region. They conquered the Tatars, they conquered Russia, and this region became a part of the empire known as the Golden Horde. Genghis Khan's empire quickly splintered into different parts, and the Golden Horde became its own empire with its own rules. And a few centuries later, the leader of the Golden Horde decided to convert to Islam, and that meant everybody had to convert to Islam. And thus, the Tatars became Muslim. Does that man have a wolf hat on his head? A bunch of Russian children being taken away by a wolf? What's going on there? Right, time to exchange some more dollars. Get low. Again, as a foreigner in Russia, ever since the sanctions were put in place, you cannot use any ATM here unless you have a local bank account. It even says Visa and MasterCard, but I believe that's only if you're a Russian citizen. You have a Visa card. $200. Да, без проблем. Должен нормально. Okay. Alright, there you have some Russian rubles. Apparently that's the biggest bill they have. It's about 50 euros, $50. This is one good thing about Russia. Just sat down on the public bench. Looks like somebody left their cell phone here by accident. Obviously, in many other countries around the world, that phone already gone. Nobody's taken. I wanted to just turn in the phone to the cafe. Now I gotta tell them I should take it to the police station. Is it American? I don't really want to go to a Russian police station.
What is your name?
Tommy. Thomas.
Ну, Тамина. Супер.
Okay. Спасибо.
Вам спасибо, что вы обратили внимание.
Okay. Found a nice lady at the hotel there. Left the phone with her. She was able to get in touch with the owner of the phone. They're gonna get the phone back. Did my good deed for the day. Unintentionally. Alright, I just checked into my hotel apartment here in Kazan, and it's pretty nice. Look at this. It even comes with an air conditioner. They don't give you an air conditioner in Western Europe.
Знаете, я пока сидел, стоял в туалете, блядь, и я лил горячую воду на ноги, я подумал, китайцы сделали себе Париж. Когда захотели жить в Париже. Типа взяли, блядь, и построили. Это было по деньгам китайцам. Типа россияне хотят захватить Киев. Украину. Блядь, у них столько территории, что они эту Украину могут построить, блядь, у себя. и жить там. По-честному. Типа, уверен, у них есть чертежи в Москве большей части старых зданий Украины. То есть, которые были построены, блядь. Потому что чертежи каких-то мостов у них точно есть. По этим ебаным чертежам за эти деньги они реально могли построить Украину. Я так думаю. Ну или, по крайней мере, самые крупные города Украины. У себя там, в России. Если им так хотелось Украину.
Once again, a full kitchen. This is the largest kitchen I've had anywhere in Europe. And then this, whatever this supposed to be, I guess it's a smoking room. One building going on over there. Whatever insight that gives me into the Russian economy. There you go, the building stuff. Comes with the obligatory shot glasses for vodka.
Я не думаю, что украинцы были бы против. Ну, типа, мы против того, чтобы была война. Если бы Россия выбрала бы просто построить несколько реплик Киева, блядь. Я был только в Киеве из этих 3 городов. Так что ничего не скажу по поводу этого.
Of course, конечно. And yeah, this whole thing, $35. $35. You can get an extra bed for the kids that I don't have. You know, I'm not saying you should fly over here tomorrow. But if you're willing to go through an insane border checkpoint, if you're willing to go someplace that's sanctioned, and if you're willing to risk possible imprisonment, then this could be a good deal. At least I'm having a good time. I'm a little bit fucked up in the head. Got some old Soviet-looking exercise equipment in the park here. These are some big dip balls right here. These are some seriously Spartan bullet balls right here. They're apparently not used very often. There's a giant spider web right there. I'm pretty sure this is what the vast majority of Russia looks like. These big buildings that date back to the Soviet era. Call them commie blocks, Soviet blocks, what have you. There's more over there across the street. Just bought some groceries from my apartment hotel. Down here, got some Tata grandmas. Tata babushkas, if you will. Один чашку.
Переводить шаг. Раз ты понимаешь.
1 стакан, да.
80.
80. Это.
Сейчас, давай. А ты кто? Югослав? Египет или кто? А ты кто? Югослав? Египет или кто?
Что?
А ты кто, да?
Америка.
О, Америка, конвой, поедем с тобой. Москва, Дубай. Экскурсии или работать? Молодец.
Это я когда? Ты продаете вещи каждый день?
Да, да. Со своей фазенды. Собираем, это все твое. Экология чистый.
Still talking about that. I can't imagine there's too many Americans walking around Kazan. All right. Just got a ferry. I'll go take it. It's a place called Bulgar. It's supposed to be pretty cool. It's the former home of the Bulgars. I think are related to the people of Bulgaria, but they're Bulgarian. This is pretty cool. It's almost like I get my own private apartment here on the ferry. So we're moving down the Volga River. The Volga River is essentially the lifeblood of Russia. It's the most important river in the country. Its tributaries feed Moscow. St. Petersburg, and goes right by Kazan and a few other cities. It was also the very first place in Russia that was a natural barrier against the barbarians, against the Tatars. All right, just grab it forward. Right, all the Tatar ladies. I'm actually not sure any attack this. The Volga? Okay. I'm not sure if this is like a tour bus. Can I just get onto it? New York. I work in. You work in Maryland? Really? Okay. What's the city? Oh, you can't drink there? No drinking? No. Что сделать?
Sensation, fashion, как это называется? Шопинг. Ну и что, мне кажется, что должен разговаривать.
Это экскурсия?
Рост научных сотрудников. Газ появляется в 2020 году, как ни крупным, рост научных сотрудников. Газ появляется
I've ended up on a tour that I don't even understand. That is apparently the largest Quran in the world. Largest Quran in the world. I didn't believe it first, but they said it has Guinness World Record certification. So it is here in Bulgar, on the banks of the Volga River, that the Tatars first adopted Islam. So this place is seen as kind of like a spiritual center for the Tatars. People come over, visit the museums, make a little day trip. Очень прекрасно.
У вас есть красивые места, такие, как у нас?
Да, это прекрасно. And here's the Tatar bachelor party. Oh, okay, photo. Yes, of course. Okay, everyone, yes, hi, Tata. Я люблю Tata. Oh, teachers? What teachers? Oh, same teachers. Oh, okay. With my limited Russian, figured out they were not a bachelor party, just a bunch of teachers. It's a teacher's party. Education party. Что это? Okay. Маленький? Yes.
Нет, маленьких нет, они там как вот такие маленькие. Маленьких нет. 200 рублей такой вот.
200 рублей, okay. This is the most famous snack in Tatarland.
Чак-шак прикольная хуйня, кстати. Достаточно жирная, но прикольная.
Kind of a Rice Krispie treat. I don't really know what this is made of exactly, but it's like a little bit tangy, but sweet. It's a good little snack. All right. As much as I enjoyed being hit on by the Tatar Teachers Union over there, let's go to the town of Bulgar. Let's go off on our own and see what we might find. We actually only have 3 hours until that ferry goes back to Kazan. There's only one boat going back, so can't miss it. Let's try and see as much as we can before then. You really don't have to walk very far before Russia starts to look like this. I can't imagine what this is like in the wintertime. Right now it's early September. I mean, who knows when the video being posted, but it's early September when I'm filming it. So this was apparently an ancient Bulgar bathhouse, an ancient Tatar bathhouse. Still here. Survived the Mongol invasions, survived the Soviet Union, survived the Nazis. I don't think the Nazis ever made it over here, but you get the point. That's good. One of the biggest surprises so far has been that Russians are extremely friendly. I mean, they kind of have like this angry, pissed off look on their face when they're walking around, but they're always really nice. I haven't had a single negative interaction in this entire country. And that's part of the reason I'm here. I know there's people, I mean, if they really feel this way, they probably already stopped watching, but people that don't want me to be here because of what the leadership in Russia is currently doing. But in my mind, that's not fair. You know, you always gotta separate people from governments. That's what I did when I lived in China. I like how you just walk into the grasslands and then you come upon another random exhibit. What's this over here? Pottery kilns. So preserved pottery from the Bulgars. Don't try to steal. You should not try to steal anything in Russia. God no. There is a Tatar motor vehicle preserved from antiquity. So this apparently is the town of Bulgar. That's the little Bulgar Tatar houses here. Some Bulgar roses. I'm trying to figure out if these are mailboxes. Yeah, must be mailbox. Or is it? I see trash in there. Trash in a mailbox. Has to be a mailbox. Maybe just old mailbox. I love the flower beds that a lot of these houses have. I mean, if I lived in Russia, the winters that they have here, I don't know how motivated I'd be to create a flower bed. Who's that yapping over there? Oh. That's a little doghouse over here. Okay, alright, get problem. Clearly he's ready to give up his territory pretty easily. Well, bitch. Rural Russia. We're not even in Siberia yet. This may look super rural, it probably is, but we're still within the Russian heartland. Everything, including Moscow, St. Petersburg, everything along the Volga River, going down to Samara, and all the way passing towards the border of Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, former Soviet states. That's the Russian heartland. And by their definition, this is all Europe. Of course, there was a time, only 5 centuries ago, where this was not part of Russia. This was a land that kept attacking the Russians. Waves of Tatars, Magyars, Huns, Scythians, all those big nomadic groups that invaded Europe, they passed along the great European plain. The Russians were always in the way. This is a little Bulgar playground. Made from recycled material. Извините, босская еда где? Чего? Босская еда, ресторанов.
Я покажу.
Что хочешь с этим или без этого? Какой средний покушать или хочешь? Я средний. Средний еда, да. Окей.
Вон, я сейчас автомобиль поворачиваю, я тебе покажу, ты дойдешь.
Окей.
Ты кто вообще?
Американец, да.
Блин, ты высокий, блядь, шею.
Ты тоже? Ну, я высокий. Я первый раз в России.
А как ты сюда попал? Приехал смотреть историю, что ли?
Историю? Я смотрел.
Мне сейчас татары были. Ты чего, ваши, блядь, просто они к себе подтянули все. Везде все накручивают, вы тоже к себе накручиваете. Я чего, ваши президент, смотрю, они какие-то дебильные. Вот сейчас, баба, выбираться в президент. Где учишься вообще, на кого ты учишься по жизни? Кто будет? Стоматолог?
Блять. Слушай, это уебище очень похоже на того долбоеба, с которым я разговаривал, блядь, нахуй, в чат-рулетке.
Выбираться в президент. Где учишься вообще, на кого ты учишься по жизни? Кто будет? Стоматолог? Да? Кто будет будешь?
Не понимаю. Вы здесь?
Я здесь живу, ну я здесь родился. Но этот город, воду поднимали, этот город не здесь был. Он был 25 километров отсюда. А после воду подняли и все, залили нас.
So, mountain keyboard.
Да что тут 4000 серий, какой сколько? Ну, сейчас, побольше. А людей не плодятся. Как вот плодятся детей? Детей много?
Дети?
Да, ну детей сколько у вас приплод? У вас там иностранцы черные, кого только нет, китайцы. Так ведь?
Черные китайцы.
У вас и черные, и китайцы. А китайцы они тоже не белые, не черные, да?
Да. There's some other conversations that will be fun to translate later.
Вот что,
Вам
с этим? У меня двоюродных сестер.
There's some other conversations that will be fun to translate later.
Вот что, с этим? У меня двоюродных сестер.
Молоко, яйцо. Это с рыбой.
Окей. Есть мясо?
Мяса нету.
Только это.
Только это.
Should have food. Just have piece of bread and some tea. Good news is that it only costs 65 cents. I think it's like dry egg inside bread. No, man. Russian MTV. Just gave it keep it better.
Блядь.
Looks like it was some kind of shop at some point. I don't know.
Толкан, блядь, на улице. Фу, пиздец.
This in the town.
Ну, кстати, классика. Это ему еще довольно чистый попался, я видел погрязнее в России.
Okay. Отдыхаешь. You can see they have their own tomato garden right in front of the restaurant. Self-sustainable restaurant. Didn't have any tomatoes in there when I was there. You know, a lot of the thing about walking around here is this used to be the capital of the Mongol Empire in Russia. Think about that. When the Mongols first conquered Russia, this was the place that showed as their first capital. Capital of the Golden Horde. Kind of hard to tell. It says mobile beer. Every single beer here is very strong. 11%. I might have to buy this right here. This is a Soviet Union beer. 11%. What? Red fish, on the way out to beer. I did buy it in the end. I think I'm going to save it for one of these super long train rides going to Siberia. Or maybe drink with teachers getting out.
Не, он, кстати, неплохо, да, по-русски шпарит.
This was a grand palace in Moscow. It's back to the time of the Golden Horde. This was like the Khan's palace. Khan was descendant of Genghis Khan. The building has very clearly been touched up a bit, been reconstructed. So in the 1500s, Ivan the Terrible, as you may remember, watching in Moscow, Ivan the Terrible conquered the Tatars. He also built a famous St. Basil's Cathedral along with 8 other churches in honor of defeating the Tatars. The Tatars had been such a problem for the Russians, and conquering them, incorporating them into Russia was a big, big deal. And ever since then, the Tatars and the Russians have been pretty much chill. Tatars, again, they follow a much less conservative version of Islam. You don't really see women walking around with hijabs. They might just have like that simple headdress that covers their hair, and that's it. And surprise, surprise, the less conservative a group is, the easier it is to integrate and fit in with everybody else, whether they're Muslim or Christian. In very, very true Mongol fashion, the Great Khan's palace was actually just a tent. The tent would have been right in here. The Mongols never liked to live that lavishly. I mean, Kublai Khan in China, he had to fit in being the Chinese emperor and all that, but it kind of gave the Mongolians their edge. They were just always ready to go and fight. They came from the streets, and the streets stayed with them. And so the Tatars are descendants of Mongols, but not just the Mongols. The Tatars aren't just one single ethnic group, that's the thing. They're also descendants of Turks coming from Central Asia, who are not the same Turks that live in Turkey, although they're genetically related. That's a whole different topic. All right, I think I gotta start getting back to the boat pretty soon. It's like 2:30. And I don't think they have taxis here. At least taxis are not easy to find. Okay, big one. Let's see what that's done. I get the port. Let's go get the boat. All right, reunited. Return to Kazan. It's getting cold already. It's winter coming. All right, say goodbye to the Teachers Union, and I think our time here in Tatarstan, Kazan, is slowly coming.
Ставь лайк, если жалеешь, что тот метеорит, который летел на Челябинск, не прилетел в Москву, блядь, и не был, блядь, больше где-то раз в 4, блядь.
Back to the Vokzal train station. If you didn't know, I'm on a journey all the way to the Pacific Ocean. We still have a long way to go. First, I need to drop my luggage off. So this is the machine. Choose your language. Choices are Russian, English, or Chinese. English. Have to sell. Still Russian. Okay. And now I'm going to sign the market position. Russia is becoming more high-tech. No Soviet Union stuff here. Then, just have to not lose this receipt, or else then we've got a lot of problems. Alright. I'm starting, so didn't quite have much of a lunch before. I'm going to go find a real Tatar meal before my 1 a.m. train was on. Kind locals has introduced me to a Tatar fast food place. Approve. It's at least as good as McDonald's. This thing, which is like a meat pie. Oh, it's like empanada. It's like a taco made of mashed potatoes with meat. It's much better than that sounds. So I'm actually walking along Karl Marx Street right here, and in general, this is apparently where the old money of Kazan live, on Karl Marx Street. Ironically. Okay. It's like 30 minutes on my train, but I just realized I'm at the wrong train station. Apparently there's 2 train stations in Kazan. I'm at Kazan 1, gotta be at Kazan 2. So, just ordered Yandex. Yandex is the Uber of Russia, because of course they have their own Uber. Hope we make it. Да, Kazan 2. Сколько минут? 15. 15 минут. Ну, хорошо. Oh my god. Yeah, cup thing over there. Big Tatar cup. Спасибо. Alright. Cool thing. So this is Kazan. Kazan station 2. This station takes north somehow. And somehow I still missed the train by like 5 seconds. Got on the platform, saw the train leaving, and then Well, guess we got another day in Kazan. We'll find a hotel. By the way, someone explain to me why in Kazan they have 24-hour flower shops? I don't understand how that makes sense.
24 цветы. Блять. Такое ощущение, что я видел этот магаз, только я видел в Ржеве. Видимо, это какая-то блядь, сеть магазинов. Выглядело точно так же.
Russian dudes out here, rushing to the flower shop at 2 o'clock in the morning to please their wife with a new bouquet of flowers. I have no idea. All right. Finally, caught the train in the nick of time. We're on a real Soviet ass train for this journey. We're on our way to Siberia. We're on our way to Asia. That's where I'll see you next. Bye. That's that. Okay, Cuba, Estonia. We are landing. They're landing? Oh. Are they afraid of road inspectors or like what? It's okay. It's okay. Hey, what do people? Tell them I'm just here to check the roads. Yeah. I'm checking the roads here. Yeah. Gonna make a road. Yeah. No. I'm scared.
You come now. She's scared of the camera. You come, baby. Don't be scared. Jabu, come. Jabu, Gotcha. Jabu, Jabu, from chill. Ida from chill. Ida from chill. Eat. You know what's good? What? Eat. Ida from chill. No, she's really scared now.
Okay, no more. Okay, done. Oh man. Yes, yeah, typical effect I have on children. And most people. Okay, Bambi. Sonia. Yeah.
Come. What? Eat. What?
Где, блядь, брызгал? Она уже здесь?
Yo cuatro. Nada más culia. Cuatro. ¿Ves? Cool. Tiro. Iba ya ni vos. Ni vos, iba. María Cabaguma. ¿Ves? Cool. Tiro des. Olha um culia. Olha um culia. Tiro um quatro. Tiro um quatro. Mama mas vamos. Por assim, vai já. Já tu colocar lá. Feita com a tiro um jungo. Não é culia. É um jungo culia. Outra jungo culia. Tiro um quatro. Tá culia. Tome, caminha. Tá culia. Baba. Tá culia. Tá culia jungo. Sai para a pianista, tiro um momento. Para a pianista, não. Para a pianista, não. Tá culia. Tá culia. Tá culia. Tá culia.
Это очень странное видео. Что он очень грязный. Бля, чувак. Он выглядит очень плохо. Это ребенок во взрослой старой одежде. Типа...
How do you say what's your name? Maria Wang. Okay. And they told me. Oberawano? Okay. Say Kinуть. Kinуть можно. Амака? Амака вот. Амака можно.
No, she's fine. You're fine? You happy? Wow, that's nice. Okay. No, like, she's not scared of you. She's not scared of you anymore.
Okay. Okay, we leave now.
Okay.
We're gonna say goodbye.
Okay, bye.
Yeah, very nice meeting you. Maria, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, how was it again? Happy to meet you.
I'm so cool.
Oh, yeah. Саня. I'm sure
No, she's okay. She's not afraid of the camera. She's not afraid of you.
Yeah.
He's Sanyu.
Yeah. Only more Sanyu? Alright, so we go now.
Okay, bye.
Блять, она, ну, действительно, выглядит очень грязной, и на ней... На ее одежде очень много дырок.
Wait about Maria. Okay. The next day. Okay. Now another child is crying. Okay.
Такое ощущение, что это самая бедная девочка в этом месте.
Really? You just feel right to go? Okay, okay. I mean, yeah. Not like, yeah, no, you don't have to do that.
Yeah. Like it's a new thing to you.
Oh, yeah.
It's a new color to you. Of course you would cry. No?
How do you explain that? Do I look like an alien to her? Or like...
No, I think she's seeing like a new color in the community.
Back in Japan. This time, come to the megacity, the largest city in the world, of Tokyo. And this time, I intend to fully explore everything that the city has to offer. And by that, I really do mean everything. Now, Tokyo would be considered by most to be the most introverted city on the planet. No worries. Capitalism has a solution to that. Here in Japan, service industries have sprung up. You can rent any kind of person, any kind of service that you want. Don't have any friends? No worries. In Tokyo, you can just pay someone to hang out with you. Don't have a girlfriend? You feel really insecure about that when you're going out? No worries. There's many different companies that will happily provide you one for a few hours, or as long as you want, as long as you keep paying. Now, as crazy as all that sounds, that's really only the tip of the iceberg. I recently learned about a service where you can, and I wish I was making this up, you can rent fat people. I'm being serious. The service is called Igrаю. They somehow found anyone that is a little bit overweight, slightly obese, and you can just rent them for an hour or two to, I don't honestly know what. I guess entertainment, make yourself feel better. I don't really know. All I know, that you only live once. So I decided to book some of these services. I think I'm a little overboard. I got both a rental girlfriend, and a rental debu, a rental fat person. That's the actual translation. Supposed to meet them just a couple hours from now. I'm getting nervous. The problem is, I booked them at almost the same time. Don't know if we're gonna vibe together. We're about to find out. I have no idea how this will go.
Чувак, тебе очки не идут вообще.
This will either be the best or the worst video that I've ever made. But there's no turning back now. Equal. Alright, where's Shibuya? We're going to meet my quote-unquote date at the most famous meeting place in all Japan, Hachiko statue. Let's go. Equal. Yeah, really lucky with the weather here. Just want to see if umbrellas here. Beautiful weather. Where's my girl? Hey, give me my friend. Konnichiwa.僕のガールフレンドで。はい。Wow, すごい。初めてガールフレンドがいます。本当、yes. Okay, yeah. Alright, yeah, thank you. アイディアがある。So apparently my girlfriend is going to wear a face mask for the entire day. Makes sense. That's typical amount of interaction I get. Alright, what's your date? Okay, people. So being that the weather is terrible, I'm going to go over to Ashitabo, which is a very famous, kind of like alpaca place. They have like manga stuff, got robots, self electronics. We can go over there and flex on those nerds with my new girlfriend. Okay? Oh, okay. Sorry, gotta go. Go to the metro. Just a normal ride on Tokyo Metro with my girlfriend. So what's going on here? She said she's having fun, so that's all I need to know. Wow. Make progress. I feel like everybody else here is just kind of jealous. What's going on? Yeah. Think of a person's head. Yeah. Just so apparently, the fat guy that I rented is somewhere in the station. We're gonna meet him and then go off on some benches. We're going to explore the area. Trying to figure out what the limits are of this paid arrangement. That's it. What that over. Wow. Let's go find the fat guy. Well, we're going to need 3 tickets. Alright. We're gonna go to an arcade. Because, when in Rome. I see a Namco sign over there. I assume that's an arcade. Game of that. Okay. Give my shit. Oh, everybody has. Nino Capo. How did this even happen? The things you can set up in Japan, I swear. Okay. Good. That's where the crank is. So we're going to keep the curtain now. I see Jeff that's balls, yes. Okay. That's close. Close, but couldn't pull off. Alright. I'll find my girlfriend. Who's got the best crank skill? Let's see. Yeah, that's it. Oh, Josh.
feel like he's got that job. Oh! He's got my energy to my girlfriend.
Бля, у чувака жир на спине. Я думаю, мне надо пойти поспать. Хватит уже. Прошлый стрим длился 12 часов. Этот стрим длится 4 часа. 16 часов суммарно. Как будто бы это много. И мои глаза мне говорят, хватит. This needs to stop. No more. What are you waiting for? Stop. Все.